It's Query and Company.
I'm going to be keeping you company for the next few hours.
You are not going to believe the company.
This company.
You're going to bankrupt your mama's company?
At least I have the radio to keep me company.
On 93.5 and 107.5, The Fan.
Indiana down 2, 56 seconds to play. Halliburton has it on top, almost lost the dribble, now stumbles to his left, regains his balance. Doncic is on him again with 10 to shoot. Halliburton driving to the foul line, he's in the lane, count it! Count it! And put Halliburton on the line with a chance for a three-point play. Mathurin driving on Reeves, step back three off the rim, rebound Doncic, 9 seconds to go. They'll hang on to the timeout. James has it right side, 4 seconds to go. On top to Doncic, a floater from the foul line is tipped in as time expires. Wow. The shot fell off the front of the rim, and it was tipped in by James.
Eddie Gill, you heard there as well last night on the call for the Pacers radio network as the Los Angeles Lakers. In the old adage, as it goes, you live by the sword, you die by the sword. And I think as disappointing as that was, and there's a lot to unpack from it, there is also the mindset that might somewhat be accurate, I don't know, of simply saying, you know what? When you flirt with that kind of a finish and you win games on the opposite side of that over the last couple of weeks almost routinely, eventually you're going to roll the dice and it's going to come up with a number that is not the one that you were looking for. In addition to that, a couple of things, there's a lot to unpack from it, but, and I know that this is a simple conclusion. I know that it is probably the easy thing to say, and I know it's an unpopular opinion, but the reality is this. There are certain players, certain athletes, certain within any sport that when it comes down to it at the end of the night, at the end of the game, as you're on your drive home, you say to yourself out loud, but that's why that player, success just seems to find them. The play just seems to come to them. I don't know why it is that they're always in the right position. But, of course, they're the one that makes that play. Now, I am well aware of the lunacy it would be for me on Indianapolis airwaves to talk about and speak up LeBron James, especially after, once again, despite it doesn't matter whether he plays for Cleveland, doesn't matter whether he plays for Miami, doesn't matter whether he plays for the Lakers. He continues to break the hearts of Pacer fans in different ways. And yes, I am well aware that LeBron's career is one that you could say, Jake, you don't know what you're talking about. He, more often than not, passes out of those situations or doesn't want to take the big shot or acts like he does and misses it. You know, whatever. Fair. Fine. The reality is that at 40 years old, what you saw last night, and who knows how many more times you'll see it, it was disappointing because it came against the Pacers, and the Pacers played, I thought actually they played a good game, but at times, especially late, they cost themselves. And I'll only say this one time because I know people don't want to hear it here. But objectively speaking, and there was a buzz in the building for certain. There was absolutely a buzz in the building. And I know that LeBron James from a, you know, like I said yesterday, I get it. I mean, he has spoken out on things that people consider polarizing, or he has offended people with some of his opinions about things beyond basketball. Fine. The guy's a great basketball player, and he's one of the greatest of all time. And to watch a guy at the age of 40 have complete control of that game. And if you watched that game last night, I don't care that he only had 2 points going into the fourth quarter or whatever it was, and it looked like his streak of 1,232 straight games in double figures might be coming to an end, an NBA record going into the fourth quarter, all of those things. He absolutely controls everything that's taking place in the game, and he did last night. And even on the final play, you can say that, well, they didn't want to go to LeBron. They wanted to go to Luka because he's the guy now. Where did they enter? Where did the Lakers go with the ball into the on the low post with 5 seconds to go? They went to LeBron. And a lot of players in that situation are going to back down. They're going to isolate. They're going to put a shot up. He immediately has the vision to cut it to the cutting Luka, who then shoots the floater. So much of what the Lakers do is facilitated by LeBron simply being on the floor, because even in games where he only has 2 points and no field goals heading into the fourth quarter, everything is predicated upon you have to still collapse on him, and his ability to redistribute the basketball before it even gets into his hands is truly incredible. He's a fabulous facilitator. But I thought the game for Indiana, for the Pacers, and trust me, it was a fun night, and it was a it's been a long time since I've walked out of there with that level of disappointment. Yes, I was disappointed they lost. I've never heard never. I'll say it right now. I don't know that I've ever heard, other than maybe once or twice when I was an idiot about something, I've never heard Shannon P. Walsh drop 5 F-bombs in like 6 seconds like she did last night when LeBron hit that shot. But it was like incredulous with everyone around us of like, no way that he would hit that shot. But so it was a great atmosphere, and it was a huge disappointment. And it would have been a massive win for the Pacers because they want to stay in front of Milwaukee and Detroit now heading down the stretch. There were a lot of things that happened late in the game that you can go back and question. Why was Tyrese Halliburton not on the floor when they needed a basket to secure the win inside of a half minute? If you look at the last 42 seconds last night, the last 42 seconds of the game, Rick Carlisle takes Tyrese Halliburton out and puts Jarris Walker in. I understand why. Defensive purposes, I understand why. And Jarris Walker comes in, who I thought last night, by the way, played outstanding. He only played, I think, 8 minutes, but he was very good when he was on the floor, except for one key moment. But Walker comes in with 42 seconds to go. Los Angeles misses a shot, and it's Walker that gets the defensive rebound. Now, the Pacers have a timeout there. They have a timeout. They could take it if they wanted and put Halliburton back on the floor, who had just hit that shot you heard Mark Boyle talk about. The situational awareness there, probably in hindsight's always 20/20, but the situational awareness there is quite in hindsight, you look back and you go, they got to have better awareness than that. They got to call that timeout because Halliburton's standing right there waiting to go back in the game. But there are two things that come into play there. Number one, if you burn your timeout to put Halliburton back on the floor and set something up to then try to put yourself up 3 and at the very least go to overtime, then what you're doing is you are sacrificing when Los Angeles comes back down, especially if you don't convert. You have Halliburton on the floor defensively as opposed to Walker. So there's give and take there in terms of which side of the basket, which side of the ball you're talking about, offensively or defensively. But yes, I understand that you would prefer for Halliburton to be on the floor in that moment. The other thing is this, though. If you look at the last 7 minutes of that game in particular, and when Halliburton started hitting shots, and when things started going for the Pacers to get themselves back into the position of the lead, a large part of that is because of the complete defensive ineptitude and lack of desire from Luka Doncic. That guy, I watched Doncic very closely last night. He's a wonderful talent. He's a great player. He also is a petulant child out there. There were 2 guys sitting in front of me, one in a gray shirt and one in a black hat. And I don't know what they said to Luka Doncic, but they kind of became Spike Lee, and they wouldn't quit yapping to him. And they were getting a kick out of it, but they were fueling him, and Doncic was buying into it, and he was hitting shots, and the things he was saying to him, I mean, I'm thinking to myself, come on, man. I mean, it's one thing to be like, see, you like that, didn't you, or whatever, but some of the stuff he was saying, to me, merited probably being given a technical, truth be told, because he's shouting it to the stands, and everybody can hear what he's saying. And he's using the worst profane insults that you can use, Luka Doncic, the entire second half of the game. But the problem with taking the timeout to get Halliburton onto the floor is you are then, if J.J. Redick wanted to do so, you are allowing then for Los Angeles to then themselves make a substitution and take Luka out of the game and put in somebody who is actually going to defend. And I think they wanted to capitalize on having Doncic. Eddie, you mentioned that as well. I think they wanted to capitalize on having Luka Doncic on the floor in that situation because you're basically playing 5-on-4.
Yep.
They didn't do it. They didn't make the change. They come down the other. They missed the shot. Matherin gets smothered, misses a shot. And it might have been, I'd have to look. It might have been Doncic that was the one that was guarding him, actually. But Matherin gets off an off-balance three, misses it. They come down. The 9 seconds that came down from a spectator standpoint, usually those things feel like forever. Like, it went quick. All of a sudden, it's like, oh, my gosh, wait, the game's over? And when he misses that, so Doncic gets the ball. Siakam, and this is what I'm talking about. You've got LeBron on the low post. They go to LeBron on the low post with like 5.5 seconds to go. And he has the vision before the ball even comes to him. He's like one of those jug machines in football that just like sits there and spins the football right back out, except for it's like a sprinkler, just oscillates around. That's what he looked like before the ball even came to him. He already had oscillated the basketball right back out to Doncic. So it comes to LeBron, but you have to respect LeBron's ability to score. Because when he wants to score, he can score. You could say all you want that he only scored a field goal before. How many did he take before the fourth quarter last night?
6 shots.
Yeah, I mean, it's not like he's – then in the fourth quarter, what does he do? He starts driving to the basket and scoring. So he gets the ball. Because he has the ball and people start to collapse on him, he then gets it to Doncic, and Doncic goes into the lane. When Doncic got the basketball, Siakam was out of position. And Siakam didn't seal the lane. Now, I understand why, because A, you got to worry about LeBron, and B, Doncic is very capable of hitting that shot from a jumper standpoint. So you've got to understand, you've got to figure out whether or not you want to, still be there to close out in case he pulls up, or give him room if he starts to drive and slide over. And because Siakam was aware of where James was, he was a half a step off on that. Not necessarily his fault. The reality of having two of the top 20 players in basketball on the same roster, on the same floor, and the same half-court set. But he drives in, and then Jarris Walker misses the block out, truth be told, if we're calling it out, and LeBron gets the tap in, and Los Angeles wins the game. I'll tell you the other thing the Lakers do really well. Really, really well. And we'll get more into this, and we're going to hear from Rick Carlisle on his thoughts on what I just talked about in terms of that substitution in about 15 minutes. But as well as Tyrese Halliburton. But one of the things that Los Angeles does as well as anybody that I've seen this year, and I don't know that I ever noticed it before, that team realistically is 2 Hall of Fame players and then a number of role players. But underneath the basket, like in the lane, they are as fast a collapsing defensive team inside of 10 feet as anybody in the NBA. Whether you are driving to the basket or whether you are trying to get a look on the low block, you think you have an opening, and that Los Angeles team is literally – they're like when you watch piranhas in the Amazon on those videos of you drop a piece of meat in and they all just swarm in. That's what they look like in protecting the rim as a unit, not just individually, as a unit. It was very difficult for the Pacers to drive last night. It was difficult for them to score underneath. The number of strips or tap outs, and then boom, that immediately leads to a break the other way. They do that as well as anybody. And that gave the Pacers boogaboo all night. After the game, Miles Turner said something very interesting. Very interesting. And I agree with him, but I was surprised at what he said. And I think most of you, when you hear it, are going to go, yeah, I get it. Although I was surprised he said it. Play that in about 15 as well. Today is Eddie Garrison's national holiday.
That's right.
Scotty Johnston as well.
That's right.
I think John's excited, J&V.
He has a pretty sick shirt that he's going to be wearing later.
Yeah, well, should I not give it away for those on the YouTube?
Correct, but don't give it away.
He dipped into the archives, into the Reds' glory years. Here's my question about baseball opening day. Do we have center field? We got to play center field.
Yeah, duh.
Fire it up right now. What the hell? Fire it up. Let's go.
Okay, I'll get it.
Opening day.
Now.
Now, here's the problem. Okay? I got a real problem. I'm like Frank Costanza at Festivus. I got a real problem with you people. And here's the problem I have with Major League Baseball. Just when you woke up this morning, and I know that opening day's been like staggered, and you're like, wait a minute, didn't they do this like 2 weeks ago in Japan, and there's other games and whatever else. But with today officially being MLB opening day, you wake up and you're hearing this, right? You're like, let's go. Baseball's here, baby. The boys of summer. Hope springs eternal. Whether you're a fan of the Miami Marlins, the Texas Rangers, the Arizona Diamondbacks, the Chicago White Sox, the Boston Red Sox, the Toronto Blue Jays, whatever it might be, this is your year. Starting over, starting from scratch. If we can just get a bullpen this year, we're going to be great. If we can just get some guys that understand small ball, we're going to be great. We got to hit the ball. We got to hit for power this year. We're going to be great. Every team, every franchise. But this is what befuddles me. Major League Baseball has been working in reverse from a PR standpoint for 20 years. They can't get out of their own way. 82, they go on strike. People are like, well, that's weird. Rubs people the wrong way. Then they go through the strike of 94. Actually, it was a lockout in 94, and people were done with it. Home Run Derby of 98, people come back. Then all the congressional hearings about steroids, and you find out the guys were cheating, and a lot of those people that went back left again. They have great players, great young players in Major League Baseball. And it is the American pastime. The NFL might be America's passion, but Major League Baseball is still, by definition, America's pastime. But here's what I don't understand. Tonight, at 7 o'clock, the sports world is basically going to turn to BYU and Alabama. BYU and Alabama. Two predominantly football programs versus basketball that are playing in the NCAA tournament and will do monster ratings tonight at 7 o'clock because everybody's going to be watching that for at least 30 minutes before Maryland and Florida then share the spotlight at 7:30. And then at 9:30, Arizona and Duke. Mighty Duke, Cooper Flagg, Arizona, proud program, newer coach, good season. Not going to blink, apparently, when it comes to playing Duke. We shall see. And then the nightcap tonight between Texas Tech and Arkansas. 4 games, NCAA tournament. Now, what makes the NCAA tournament what it is? Why do people fall in love with the NCAA tournament besides their brackets, which is a big part of it? It's because the opening day of the NCAA tournament, the top day in the country for men to get their vasectomy is the day before the NCAA tournament or the Masters because they know they're going to lay on the couch and watch ball all day. Prime 47. What did Brad and the boys at Prime 47 do? Hey, Fast Break Friday, opening round of the NCAA tournament, day number 2. Come by here, steak and sliders and mac and cheese and drinks all day long because there's games all day long, starting at noon. And every time you think like, man, this is just the best, another game fires up and another game fires up. The magic of the NCAA tournament is the first round of it, the first 2 days of it, there are games nonstop. It's a buffet. Just one after another 6-course meal, baby. Let's go. Major League Baseball opening day happens, and you got to wait till 3? Why in the world are there not games on right now? Why are they not doing this like the NCAA tournament? The whole country, as a part of the American culture, has Major League opening day circled on their calendar. And here it is, and you get up, and that music's playing in your head, and you walk outside, and it's sunny out, and you're like, let's go. Businessman special, I'm ready to watch a game. Wait, I got to wait till 3? Why are they not doing games all day long to celebrate opening day? Here are the games you've got today. You've got the Reds and the Giants. That gets underway, I believe, at 4 o'clock, right? The Reds used to be, it's an opening day in Cincinnati. Like, they're doing parades.
Mm-hmm.
People are blowing up little poodle balloons.
That's exactly why it's at 4 o'clock.
People are juggling all over the place. But why is that not the first game?
That's an excellent question. I don't know that answer.
There's no way, if there's no way that the festivities of opening day in Cincinnati, that they can't do it earlier so the game can start at 1 o'clock and be the first game to kick things off. Or because they are not the first game to kick things off, why are there not games that are being played at noon? Or why are there not games on right now?
Because so I'm looking at last year, 1:10 was the scheduled start of the first game of the day last year.
So why are they not doing that this year?
My guess is because they ran into a lot of weather delays last year and weather issues a season ago, and I don't know.
There's no reason for it. None. Zero.
It's the MLB. What are we talking about?
That's what I'm talking about. They can't get out of their own way. They have a chance to own the day here, and instead, with the NCAA tournament getting underway at 7 o'clock, they're like, let's push back to as close as possible to have our games bleed over into the NCAA tournament that everybody is going to be watching as possible. It makes no sense. None. I'm excited for it, but I literally was like, the World Cup's the same way. I'm not a soccer fan, but I enjoy the World Cup because I like the fact that it's sports on during the day, and I can turn it on at 11 o'clock in the morning and just have it on in the background, and there's just game after game after game, and it's fun to have stuff to watch. Everybody remembers when you were a kid and you had a dentist appointment or a doctor's appointment, and your mom or your dad or your aunt or whoever got you out of school for the day at 11 o'clock in the morning, and then on the way back, you got to McDonald's for a Happy Meal at the drive-thru before you went back to school, and you felt liberated. You're like, this is crazy. It's a Wednesday, and I'm not in school, and I'm getting a Happy Meal. This is awesome. You loved everything about it because it was a break from the norm of your routine. That's why the World Cup, that's why the opening day of the NCAA tournament, people fall in love with those things that aren't normalized fans of those events or those teams, because it's a break from the norm of their schedule. Major League Baseball has the opportunity to take advantage of that today, and they can't get out of their own way.
Well, if you're trying to grow the game and you're trying to get younger kids to watch, younger kids are in school.
Okay, fine.
So
younger kids also, Eddie, my point being, yes, okay, sure. You have plenty of opportunity for that the rest of the year. The World Series, they should do that. Yeah. The World Series, they used to do a day game of the World Series, and kids would run home at 4 o'clock and watch the World Series game right after school, whatever else. But if you're trying to grow the sport at this point, yes, you need to grow it with younger people, but you need to make adults aware of it too, because it's completely faded in the relevancy of the American landscape versus what it was 30 years ago. I guarantee you there are people that were like, oh, opening day today, cool. I'll put a game on while I'm at work today. And then they're like, wait a minute, they don't start until I get home? It makes no sense to me. Like, it should be a day that is a holiday that goes all day long, instead of delaying it and then running it up against the NCAA tournament. End of rant. By the way, IHSAA high school basketball state finals this weekend. We look forward to that. And also, it is a Thursday, so my conversation with the different IHSAA athlete, there's one of them that I'm telling you, when she puts on her letter jacket, it's got to weigh like 10 pounds because she's played every single sport at her school. That conversation coming up in just a couple of minutes. But in about 5 from now, Rick Carlisle on why no timeout. Tyrese Halliburton on having to watch the last play of the game instead of being on the floor. And Miles Turner with an epiphany that's probably a lot of truth and I think might make you feel a little bit better, but I'm surprised he said it. All that next. By the way, this just in the last, I think, hour or so, and this is something that is not necessarily shocking news because it's been rumored about for a while now. But apparently, so you remember the 89 NCAA tournament when Bill Frieder had agreed to become the head coach at Arizona State, and just before the tournament began said, hey, I'm going to leave for Arizona State, but I'm willing to coach the team in the tournament. And Bo Schembechler, the athletic director at Michigan, said, no, that's cool. We got a Michigan man that's going to coach us, Steve Fisher, the assistant. We're just going to give him the job. And so Bill Frieder left in between the end of the season and then the NCAA tournament. And now there is apparently word that, in fact, and this has been rumored very heavily for the last couple of days, that Kevin Willard of Maryland is going to accept the job at Villanova. There is now apparently discussion within the Maryland fan base of whether or not he should be relieved of his duties before tonight's game between Maryland and Florida at 7:30.
What in the world?
Hey man, if you're gonna go. That's like the thought process, right?
I mean, Will Wade had accepted the job with NC State days before McNeese played in the tournament, and I didn't see McNeese fans pleading for them to get rid of him.
The difference is this, and I'm not saying that that's what's going to happen with Kevin Willard. I mean, there's all kinds of flying rumors out there. It looks to be a done deal that he is going to be the next coach at Villanova. The difference being, Eddie, I think when you are McNeese, you understand and expect that your coach at any time could leave for a bigger position. If you're Maryland, you're saying to yourself, what does Villanova have an offer for you that we don't? And you are in the Sweet 16 right now as opposed to just entering into the postseason.
Well, didn't Kevin Willard just air out everything last week after one of their games that their athletic director was leaving? And if the athletic director is leaving, why would I stay with a new athletic director if he's potentially could be looking to replace me?
I mean, also a fair point, right?
Yeah.
And Villanova's got deep pockets for sure. All right, last night Pacers game. Again, I recapped it, but I'll tell you again what happened. 42 seconds left. You know it by now. Rick Carlisle makes a substitution, puts in Jarris Walker for Tyrese Halliburton. Now, I love Tyrese Halliburton, and he has been on another level, another planet for the last, 2 months since the break. Certainly in the last 10 games, in terms of his assist-to-turnover ratio, he's back to being the Halliburton that we have come to expect and the guy that is the engine driving the Pacers. But what does it say? If there is an area to nitpick, what does it say about a guy that is a potential all-NBA level player when he's playing at his best? It's an Olympian and an all-star ambassador for the city of Indianapolis, that in the last minute of a game that's a critical game against a big-time opponent with two of the best players in the game on the floor, that you have to take Halliburton out of the game because you don't trust him defensively, which is basically what happened. I'm nitpicking, and I understand it, and Jarris Walker played really well last night. I thought Jarris Walker, he had a big three. He played really well last night. But in the end, Jarris Walker was the one that missed the block out on LeBron. That's not to say that Tyrese Halliburton would have been the one to block him out. But, that's just an interesting anecdote to it. But Rick Carlisle certainly, with 42 seconds left, makes that change. Halliburton is then on the sidelines. The Pacers have a 1-point lead. They have a possession that runs down. Yes, perhaps Carlisle was thinking he didn't want J.J. Redick to have a chance to himself. The same thing. Luka Doncic is one of the best players in basketball, but defensively he's a turnstile. And perhaps they didn't want J.J. Redick to be able to substitute in a better defender for Luka Doncic in that moment. So they took their chances. They went with Mathurin, who probably did over-dribble a little bit. The shot clock was running down, though, and he got a bad look, missed a three. The Lakers come down, and Doncic hits the game winner, misses the game winner, and LeBron taps it in after flashing in from the side after making a nice pass to Doncic to facilitate all of it. Halliburton was standing on the sidelines. I looked over at him, and you could see he kind of had the hands on the head and then kind of the lift of the shoulders, just like, what in the world? Like everybody else, incredulously watching what unfolded before him. Not necessarily because he wasn't on the floor, but because of just the disbelief of what you just witnessed that happened in the blink of an eye, where a game that you almost didn't realize, wait a minute, like they could lose this game, and then boom, it's over. Here is Rick Carlisle after the game on whether or not, Rick, did you think about in that moment taking the timeout to get Halliburton on the floor?
Considered it. Looking at it now, it certainly would have been the thing to do given the result. But there was a 9 or 10 second difference. Had we scored, they probably were going to run it back at us. And so that group had a good run in the fourth, so I just decided to stay with it. But that was my decision. Also was a big factor was we had a foul to give, and we're all, we talked about it in the huddle, and everybody on the sideline was yelling it, and we just didn't do it. They got turned loose for a shot, and then we didn't get a body on LeBron.
And again, the not getting a body on LeBron is something that with Jarris Walker, you'd like to have back. I don't necessarily totally blame him there because that's the danger. And for the Lakers, and I think the Lakers are going to be. It would not. When I say this, you are going to laugh at me. Assuming they stay healthy, big if. Assuming they stay healthy, I'm not saying they're going to do so. It would not surprise me if the Lakers win the West. Would not surprise me because they have players that feed very well off of what. Now, they don't go real deep, but when you have those two between Luka and LeBron James on the floor, it is very difficult in late game situations like that. You got to pick your poison. The Pacers picked the poison of Luka to go ahead and try to collapse, and then as a result of that, it allows LeBron. They went to LeBron on the low post. He makes that pass to Luka, and then the Pacers get out on Luka for the floater, and you miss LeBron coming in for the tap-in. That's just the way it works.
So I went back and watched it again. The reason why LeBron makes that pass is because Jarris is the one who's actually trying to foul LeBron in the post. When he has his back to Nesmith just needs to grab him and foul him because they had a foul to give. And Walker was the only one that made the attempt in the notion to try to go foul LeBron. Thus, it allowed pretty much 4 wide-open Lakers for 3 Pacer players.
And, Eddie, I do think that, like with Nesmith was also very conscientious of where Luka was because once LeBron passed that right back out, it's Nesmith that jumps out. So I just think it's, you're kind of off kilter because you're trying to play both sides here of like, wait a minute, which one of these am I not going to let beat us in that moment? But either way, Tyrese Halliburton was standing. He probably went back and watched it too because like you, like me, he watched it not on the floor, but as a spectator to all of the action. Tyrese, your thoughts not being on the floor final minute?
Yeah, obviously I want to be on the floor. That's no surprise. But I think at that time, I trust his decision-making, and we got to stop. It looked like we were in semi-transition, I thought we just slowed up a little bit. But, yeah, of course I want to be on the floor. But, I trust his decision-making, and I'm riding with whatever decision he's making. And, when I'm on the floor, I think he's riding whatever decision I'm making. So, it's ebbs and flows. And, I'm sure if we could have it back, we'd probably want to call a timeout there. But, it's going to happen through the course of a season. And I thought we responded the right way.
Now, what they have to do is respond tonight with Washington because that's a big one. And I know that sounds crazy against a team as bad as the Wizards, but you can't. You can kind of afford to let this one get away so long as you do not stub your toe tonight. But the Pacers have obviously had, you go back to the situation with Milwaukee, the 4-point play that won that game for the Pacers and Halliburton and the heroics there. The game against Dallas where you're sitting there and you're thinking there's no way that they're going to lose this game to Dallas, right? And then the last-minute heroics in that game. The Minnesota game up there where you end up winning shorthanded and you're playing with fire. They played with fire, and it has gone their way virtually every time. But live by the sword, die by the sword. Miles Turner, is there any sort of silver lining in finally one not going your way?
I think it needed to happen, personally. You get on these Cinderella historic type runs for a couple weeks, and, at times you need to be humbled. You got to do all the little things right to win a game in this league, and a couple things we didn't get right there. So, I'm glad it kind of brought us back down to earth a little bit. We have a tough road ahead just to, try to get home court advantage in the playoffs. So, you obviously want to win games. Don't misquote me there. But at the same time, this is also a humbling, thing that happened.
Interesting. I like the honesty there, to be honest. But I like again, live by the sword, die by the sword. Maybe indeed, it's kind of like they say with the NCAA tournament for that matter. Sometimes when your team's won 22 straight going into the tournament, there are people that are like, is it bad if you lose in the conference tournament? Kind of bring you back down to earth a little bit. Maybe it's just superstition that comes into it. We have tickets to give away, right, Eddie?
That is accurate, Jake.
We have tickets to give away for the Black Keys. This is going to be on August 24th from our friends at Live Nation and Everwise Amphitheater over at the Lawn at White River. We're going to do it on the other side. We doing trivia or get to know your listener?
Let's do get to know your listener.
All right, 239-1070. That's 239-1070 to use the old terms. We'll select a number. We'll take that caller. We'll do it as we always do with the style of get to know your listener, which kids love. We've had a lot of research on this. Kids love this segment. Tony E's going to join us on the program coming up at 2 o'clock. We'll get back into the Pacers conversation. And big one for Purdue happening right around the corner from here on our own backyard. And one of the guys that will be on the broadcast for that is going to join us to break that down in 18. But ticket giveaway next. many tickets do we have to give away, Eddie?
4, so 2 pairs.
Oh, really? We're doing away. We're doing both pair right now.
Yes.
Are we scattering it around? Okay.
No, we're doing it now.
239-1070. That's 239-1070. I always like when I do a little trivia question with these deals as well. Now, would that be inappropriate for me to just spring a trivia question on somebody?
Well, Jake, it's your show, so you can do whatever you want.
Well, hardly. Okay. Here's a. Let me do a little tabulation here real quick on something. Okay. I believe I've got a little trivia question lined up here. Okay. Let's go with what number are you going with, Eddie?
We're going with 2.
Caller number 2.
Jason.
Jason, how are you?
Hey, I'm doing great. How are you?
I'm well, thank you. Have you called the program before, Jason?
Absolutely. I got New Mexico in the tournament.
Oh, okay. Well, I actually thought New Mexico might have pulled off an upset in the tournament, but they got bounced by what? Was it Michigan State that knocked them out?
Maryland
knocked them out. Okay. Jason, you are how old a fella, if you don't mind me asking?
I am 56.
56-year-old Jason. Have I asked you this question before about your high school?
Oh, no, you're right. Sorry.
Was it
No,
Michigan
you
State? Hey, Eddie, how about you sit down until you get stuff right?
Sorry. Yeah. I got Colorado State backwards with New Mexico.
I'm being facetious, of course. Jason, I'm sorry. What high school did you say?
I did not, but I went to Southport High School.
Southport, okay. And you would have been class about 86, somewhere in there?
Correct.
Great gym
No,
at Southport, right?
I graduated in 88.
88, okay. That's a great gym in Southport. They had an unbelievable, I thought one of the best athletes, most underrated athletes of our respective eras, would have been a little behind you, was Marlon Fleming, who was a fleet of foot center and a very good fullback for Southport that went on to Ball State. All right, Jason, here, I got a question for you. You ready?
Yes.
BYU, Alabama, Maryland, Florida, Arizona, Duke, Arkansas, and Texas Tech. Those are the teams that are all playing tonight in the NCAA tournament. We know, obviously, that Duke has a multitude of national championships. But what is the total number of national championships represented by the other schools that I just mentioned, the other 7 that are going to perform tonight?
The total of all. I will say 6.
Not bad. Not bad. Maryland with 1, Florida with 2, Arizona with 1, and Arkansas with 1. 5. Not bad. Who are you rooting for in the tournament remaining, Jason?
I'll have to go with Arkansas.
Woo, pig suey. All right, I'm down with that. Well, I'll tell you what, you can, if Arkansas wins it, you can still celebrate by having yourself a cold beer or a Diet Coke is perfectly sufficient on August 24th when you are going to be watching the Black Keys, and you will be sitting probably nearby our other caller on the program, which is Nick. Stay on the line, Jason. We'll get your information. Hi, Nick. How are you?
Never better. How are you, Jake?
I'm good. Nick, you sound like a fun guy. Have we talked before?
We have never spoken before. However, I grew up just south of your high school alma mater and am lifelong friends with the Akers family, who you might know. And I took a charge from Marlon Fleming in the sectional tournament down at Southport. And
the bruise just went away 3 weeks ago, right?
Yeah.
Now, Nick,
and I hit 2 free throws to end Steve Cochran's career at North Central as their head coach. So at Hinkle Fieldhouse. So
now hold on, Nick. I liked Steve Kaufman. I don't know whether I should celebrate that or be mad at you. He was a nice guy, right?
Well, his team only won 2 games that senior season.
I actually sat next to him on an airplane.
Get Eric Allen to come out to the team because he was going to play cornerback for IU.
Eric Allen was a hell of a player. So, Nick, you were at what high school then?
Park Tudor School.
Park Tudor School. All right. And you were the class of what?
93.
93. So you would now, Greg Akers would have been, what, like 2 years older than you, 3 years older than you?
No. He's 4 years older than I am.
Yeah. Now, Krista Akers would have been 3 years older than you, right?
Yep.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
And Krista Akers was.
And Kendra, even older.
That's right. Not to bore the rest of the audience with our intimate details of the Akers family, but my buddy dated Krista Akers in high school, and we decided one time that we were going to take Krista and another girl, Michelle Nelson, down to Cincinnati for dinner one night on a Friday night. Big excursion in high school, and we went down to some restaurant, and we serendipitously met Roger Staubach in the men's restroom. They weren't with us in the men's restroom, but Roger Staubach.
Well, that's good to hear.
How about that story? Yeah, and then here's the better part. Roger Staubach's in the restroom with me and Farkas. and the other two girls are waiting for us out in the restaurant, and we were in the bathroom forever because there's a guy, I kid you not, a guy pukes in the bathroom, comes out of the stall after puking. Roger Staubach, Farkas, and I look at the guy, and we're like, dude, you okay? And the guy, and I kid you not, true story, the guy says, I'm about to propose to my girlfriend, and I'm as nervous as can be. Can I practice? And so he gets down on one knee and practiced his proposal to Roger Staubach, and then the three of us went out and cheered the guy on, and he got engaged.
You've got to be kidding me.
Can I make that story up off the top of my head? Barney Stone Restaurant in Cincinnati, Ohio. I kid you not, 1990. All right, Nick, just for allowing and facilitating for me to go down that trip of memory lane, I can tell you 2 bits of good news and information here. Greg Akers has actually gained 3 pounds since high school, and you're going to be at the Black Keys on August 24th. Say hi to Jason while you're there, all right? You guys can reminisce about Southport.
Will do.
All right, Nick, I appreciate it, man. That's how we do it with Get to Know Your Listener, and it leads to totally bizarre stories that are actually factual of my past. We come back. We will be talking with Bobby Riddell, who is going to be on the radio call for the Purdue Boilermakers tomorrow night. We'll preview it. Boilers, Houston, next. NCAA tournament resumes tonight on the opening day of Major League Baseball, but you got to wait another 3 hours before anybody throws a pitch. BYU and Alabama tonight, 7 o'clock. That game actually has potential to be crazy because BYU scores at a furious pace. Alabama's not afraid to run either. That's not going to have Loyola Marymount, Michigan vibes, but probably close to it. I'll bet it's going to be a frantic one. Maryland and Florida at 7:30. Is Florida the best team every year that no one talks about?
I feel like nobody's talking about Arizona.
True, but Arizona's not had the year that Florida's had. I mean, Florida every year, it seems like a rite of passage every year on Selection Sunday is to go, wait, Florida's a what seed? They've won 29 games? I haven't heard about them all year.
I kind of push back on you on that one. I feel like they were the second pick to Duke in a lot of brackets.
Yes, I mean, this year, they in the last part of the season, they got a lot of love, right?
Yeah.
For the way that they were playing at the end of the year. But and yes, you're correct. Arizona this year in particular has kind of been flying under the radar, right? Is it under the radar or off the radar?
Ooh, that's a good question because I think it's under the radar because that would mean you're not on the radar.
So it's the same thing. If you're under the radar, that means the radar doesn't see where you are because you're flying too low, right?
Yeah.
But you don't want to be flying low. You want to be flying high, right?
Oh, I know all about that, Jake.
Okay. And then you got Texas Tech that has become like this proverbial. I don't even know if it's true about Texas Tech, but when I think of them, I just think that, those guys are going to play you hard defensively. I have no idea if that's true. I mean, I'm going by what I saw from Texas Tech like 9 years ago. You know what I mean? But BYU, I'm telling you, like those guys they got four of them out there that just run. They'll pull up from anywhere. That game tonight, BYU and Alabama. What's the over-under in that game? I'm going to say the over-under on that game has got to be minimum, I'll say 178.
Oh, wow, you're close.
What is it?
175.
See, look, I mean, the bottom line is I'm not necessarily somebody that dabbles on a regular basis in terms of those avenues, but when it comes to handicapping, I'm your dude. Joining us now on the program, and I'm sure thrilled to be doing so based on that segue, he is, of course, the radio analyst for Purdue and their radio network as the Boilermakers get set tomorrow night to take on Houston. Bobby Buckets Riddell joining us on the show. Bobby, I'll begin with this. This may be, and I know that Purdue, I was talking about Texas Tech, but Purdue has really worn their hard hat defensively under Matt Painter, really going back to Gene Cady. This might be the toughest defensive team that they're going to have seen all year yet in Houston. Would you agree with that?
Hey, Jake. Thanks for having me on. Yeah, I would agree for sure. I think this Houston team is going to be the most formidable defensive team we face, and it makes sense considering where they stack up analytically. They're the top team defensively per KenPom and defensive efficiency. And it checks out on paper, and when you watch them, it checks out as well. They pass the eye test for sure. Kind of the style of play. I feel like their personnel, just so many different guys that are interchangeable, really good athletes. Their front court, it's got guys in that 6'8", 6'9" range that are athletic and mobile as far as being able to be versatile and switch out onto guards if they need to, but also have that ability to be really active, hedging ball screens and trapping, things of that nature. Just a vaunted defense for sure, and it's going to take one of Purdue's best offensive efforts of the year to come out on top.
Let's go back to, I'll just say Valentine's Day, okay? So we're going to go back a little over a month ago, Bobby. As you're watching Purdue over the course of the season, and with any team, there are peaks and valleys over the course of a season. You never know when a team is, sometimes you look back on a team and you go, man, at that point I thought they were invincible, but little did I know they were in a zone there playing their best basketball that went away from them they peaked at the wrong time, if you will. So let's go back a month ago, and I'll start with this side of it. Tell me something that worried you about Purdue in, say, mid-February that now you're not as worried about because it seems as though it's an area that they have addressed and or has taken care of itself.
Ooh, really good question because, there's certainly, a number of areas I feel like I could go. But probably the one that I think that stands out the most to me would just be our role players at that time and their inability to make shots at a consistent basis. Heidi and Colvin are kind of the two guys in particular that really stand out from that standpoint because they were going through some major struggles during Big Ten play as far as their three-point percentage goes. Cox and Harris have, Jakari shot the ball really well during Big Ten play after struggling earlier in the year. And then C.J. Cox has kind of been a little bit more streaky as far as, his games, as far as his performance goes from downtown. But, those guys really had a struggle as a whole as far as coming through with big timely shots during our losing streak there in February. And there was other issues, of course, too. Defensively, we were allowing way too many easy baskets at the rim. And I do feel like we've done a much better job cleaning that up, not allowing teams to thrive in the paint the way they were. And granted, some of that is different types of competition, and we've been facing, mid-major teams here as of late compared to, high major teams. But I do think that timely shot making, it's so critical to make a deep run. You need your star players to ball out, obviously, but you need your role players to come through in big moments and hit timely shots because good defensive teams like Houston are going to go out of their way to take away, Braden Smith and Trey Kaufman-Renn, and rightfully so. So can Purdue's other guys, when they get opportunities, come through and knock down shots, and that's what Purdue's done a much better job here as of late and has allowed them offensively to be more dynamic.
Okay, so the other part of this question would be, give me the thing that a month ago you didn't even think about as being an Achilles for Purdue that you would assume Houston has dialed in on, and right now Purdue is very susceptible in and could be an area that Houston attacks.
Yeah, I think, rebounding-wise, we've done a much better job here lately. Of course, it's going to be even more difficult going against a team like Houston. If they just destroy us on the glass, get a bunch of second-chance opportunities, we're going to be in big trouble. But we've been holding our own on the glass here as of late. Houston's going to be a whole different challenge, but I'm not as concerned from that standpoint. I do think offensively we've been a little bit hit or miss this year as far as how we take care of the basketball. Even in this last game against McNeese, we had a high number of turnovers. Granted, I will say it, a number of them seemed to kind of occur after the game was no longer in doubt, and we got a little bit sloppy with the ball there when we knew we were going to win already. So kind of can throw out some of those. But, Marquette, our game against Marquette this year, our game at Penn State, some others where we just got really loose with the ball and had high turnovers, and that ended up, really costing us. A team like Houston, who's already so good defensively, you're probably not going to get a ton of second-chance opportunities against them. If you're turning the ball over, especially live ball turnovers, and going the other way for Houston and they're getting easy baskets in transition, it's going to be a long night. So I think Houston, with the way they aggressively trap the basketball, the way they fly around, they're more disciplined than a team like McNeese is. Both McNeese and Houston are similar from a standpoint of they're really active and they fly around defensively. It just feels like Houston a little bit more disciplined in their approach. Of course, even bigger and more athletic than McNeese as well. And so if that would be a concern of mine, is just the way they're going to be attacking Braden off ball screens, the way they're going to be attacking Trey Kaufman-Renn in his post-ups, things of that nature. Those guys are going to have to be really good as far as taking care of the basketball, because if they are, then I think you can get some decent looks against Houston, because obviously if they got two guys on the ball, you're playing on 4-on-3 off the ball, and that's when you can really have success. But it's that initial pass. Can you get it out of your hands and get it into a teammate who's in a position to make a play for himself or others, and then you could be in business. But just the way Houston, with their aggressiveness, that definitely concerns me.
By the way, Eddie, did you sense a small breeze just a second ago? Bobby, I know that occasionally your radio's broken and you listen to this program. Are you familiar with our friend Robin the Genie by any chance, Bobby? Have you ever heard Robin the Genie on the program?
I have not heard Robin the Genie.
Well, Robin the Genie occasionally, he. Thank you very much. Yes, it's a pleasure to talk with you. Well, that's our friend Robin, he just made his way in. Robin typically, Eddie, if I'm not mistaken, offers people a chance to win a lot of money with a prediction, correct?
It's usually up to $1 million.
$1 million, but I do not have the money today, but I simply have a proposal for Bobby. Okay, Robin, go ahead. Bobby, here's the thing. As a genie, I have the ability to influence things from afar, and I would like to make you this offer. If I had the ability to pick one player for Purdue, I love Braden Smith, I like his beard, and Trey Kaufman-Renn, they do not need my help. They're very, very good players. But I can pick one player as a genie to make sure they have the game of their life, and they're the most critical one for Purdue against Houston. What player would you so choose that would be a key for them? It's a very good question from Robin the Genie, Eddie, right?
Very strong.
So, Bobby, there you go. If there's one guy that Robin the Genie can actually give the powers to do everything that is necessary for Purdue, not named Trey Kaufman-Renn or Braden Smith, who is the guy that could be that X factor that they would need to take advantage of against Houston?
Man, a great question there from Robin the Genie.
He's a genie for a reason, right?
Yeah, that was good stuff there. I'm going to go with, it's probably the easy pick, but I'm going to go with Fletcher Lawyer. When Fletcher's made 3 or more threes in a game this year, we're undefeated. I think that's up to 14-0 now on the season when he's hit that mark. It feels like, based on some of those things we just discussed regarding their aggressiveness, that there's going to be opportunities for Fletcher to be, open on the backside for some clean looks. And if he's able to come through and knock those down at a high percentage, that's going to obviously really help Purdue out. And he's also just, someone who seems to have, he loves playing in the big game, has had some of his best performances in big games like this. Teams like Houston that are physical, tough-minded defensively, like on paper, it feels like it'd be a really tough matchup for Fletch because he's not the quickest guy, not the greatest off the bounce. But some of his best performances have been against, teams like Arizona or Tennessee, and these teams in the past that are really athletic teams. And I think he craves these big moments. And so if Fletch can have a huge game, knock down a ton of shots, start playing with some of that swagger, get the crowd into it, I think that could be a difference maker for Purdue.
As a genie, Bobby, the thing is, I come out of the bottle after many years of dormancy when you least expect it. So what player for Purdue could be their genie? Also a good question. Like a Miles Colvin, for example? He has the ability, like, is there somebody on the roster that the matchups with Houston all of a sudden facilitates for them to have their Carson Edwards, Ryan Klein moment where it's like, but I mean, Fletcher Lawyer obviously has had big moments, right? Is there somebody that is just waiting to be unleashed for Purdue?
Yeah, I would guess it would be like a CJ or Miles would be those two guys. We've seen CJ go on some crazy heaters this year. The Alabama game was kind of his coming out party. That game at home against second-ranked team in the country. Goes on that personal 9-0 run, I think it was, with 3 threes in a row. He's shown against Auburn he has some really good moments, so he's fully capable of putting up some big performances against quality opponents. He also just has that ability to create a play off the bounce and get his own shot. Made a couple of nice plays like that against McNeese. So when you're playing a really good team defensively, you're oftentimes going to get some possessions that don't go super smooth, and you might have to make some plays late shot clock. And outside of Braden Smith, and Trey Kaufman-Renn, he's one of those other guys on the team that is capable of kind of putting the ball on the floor, creating some space, rising up and making, a mid-range jumper or a three. So CJ is kind of the guy to me that I think just has that capability to get hot and also do it, when the team needs it most. But Miles is also that other guy who, like Fletcher, I could see him having a bunch of clean looks on the backside of the defense with his athleticism, have opportunities to make some plays in transition, catch a lob or something like that, an offensive rebound, tip back dunk, as we saw in Providence, how special he can be in those situations. So, yeah, I like those two guys as hopefully being guys that could have like just massive breakout games, make, 5+ threes, some splash plays, and help Purdue get over the top.
By the way, if you had to break it down, Bobby, the crowd at Lucas Oil, you're going to have Houston, Purdue, Kentucky, Tennessee, right? So we know this. We know that any of the Kentucky, and I know that Purdue's the late game, so maybe like a lot of those fans don't stick around perhaps, but anybody other than Houston fans that's there is rooting for Purdue, right? I mean, literally everybody there. It seems to be like they're going to have a huge crowd advantage. But is that tough? Is it tough sometimes? I know you'd rather play home, but is there a pressure that comes with that, so to speak, as opposed to just like, is it advantage Houston to just getting away and being kind of on your own, you against the world type deal?
I mean, yeah, I mean, you could say that for sure, but I just think this plays into Purdue's advantage. I think Purdue, as the underdog and the team that, you know, is up against a really talented team, I think you need every sort of advantage you can get, and I do think having the crowd behind you that can lift you up from an energy standpoint and maybe put some pressure on the opponent with the crowd noise could work in your favor. And I think it needs to help Purdue in a big way. And like you said, Purdue should have a great turnout. You would think Houston would have the least amount of people there based on distance. And you're right. You would think, just based on the matchups on paper, that whoever wins that Tennessee-Kentucky game, those fans would stick around to watch who they're going to play in the Elite Eight. And you would think either one of those fan bases would be pulling for Purdue, just from the standpoint of that would be the preferable matchup on paper. Granted, Tennessee fans, we've scorned them pretty heavily here in recent years, whether that's basketball or football. So not sure how much they love the Boilers these days, but they also might be thirsty for a little bit of revenge, right? Like a chance to make amends for the Elite Eight loss last year. They probably see a Purdue team that doesn't look as formidable on paper as last year's squad. And so even though they don't love the Boilers these days, I would certainly see, based on matchup and based on, you know, opportunity to maybe get some redemption, that they would pull for the Boilers to beat Houston as well. So it'll be interesting to see, like you said, how many of those fans stick around. I would guess the winning team fans will stick around, but the losing team fans, I suppose maybe depends on how mad they are or how much they spent on their tickets on whether they want to stick around and watch that next game, because, you know, hopefully the Houston-Purdue game is a really good game and super exciting and should be fun to watch.
Bobby, I'm going to give you this opportunity here. Bobby Riddell is our guest, who, of course, played at Purdue, 06 to 09, right? Those are the years that you were at Purdue. And now works with Rob Blackman on the Purdue Radio Network. You've been around this program for a long time in various capacities. We had Elliot Bloom on yesterday. Maybe I'm beating this horse to the point where it is glue holding together a table, but I think it's worth continuing to discuss. There are 5 players on the starting 5 for Purdue that began their college career at Purdue. That's an anomaly in the Sweet 16. The majority of players on the Purdue roster are from the state of Indiana. There are players on the Purdue roster that probably could have transferred out and made big money or had opportunity elsewhere, but they stuck with Purdue. Can you tell me a story or think for a second and then relay for us a moment or, you know, just an encounter, an experience that you observed over the last 20 years of the Purdue family and the way that Purdue and Matt Painter have established that cohesiveness that makes the program different, that makes it special, that where you just saw something or you saw an exchange or some sort of an experience and you said to yourself, I don't think that happens everywhere?
A great question, and yeah, there's millions of examples I can think of what makes Purdue basketball, you know, so special. And like you said, I've been really fortunate, been able to see the program, you know, in lots of different lights over, the last 20 years or so, from, you know, playing days to the year I spent as a grad assistant to, you know, the last 5 years now where I've been on the radio broadcast team. It's been really neat to follow Coach Painter throughout this whole time period, because my freshman year as a player was his first year as the head coach. So kind of been able to see up close and personal a lot of what Coach Painter's been able to do with the program. And Elliot Bloom has been a part of the program that entire time as well, which has been really cool. And, you know, those guys are attached at the hip and are such a great team as far as, you know, what they do for Purdue basketball. And Elliot does so much stuff behind the scenes, as I'm sure you've heard about, as far as what makes Purdue basketball tick. And yeah, it's just the camaraderie, honestly, is just something that's incredible. And I suppose I can just attest, as far as my position as a radio broadcaster, which probably separates us from a lot of different programs. And granted, it started with Gene Cady when he was there and kind of his relationship with Larry Clisby and the radio broadcast team back at that point, where they basically started incorporating Larry and the radio broadcast team into the family, on these road trips, being able to incorporate those guys, like, treating them almost like they're extensions of the staff as far as the access they get and the way they're treated, like part of the family. And I've obviously been the benefactor of that now that I'm on the broadcast team. Me and Rob, we get all kinds of access, and I hope it comes out in our broadcast as far as the quality and some of the insights we can give, because we are allowed that access, which is a lot of fun. And I just appreciate the culture that Coach Painter's built, because from day one, even when we weren't a winning team, like my freshman year, we got last in the Big Ten. It was his first year. It was a big struggle. You never felt like it was a toxic situation. Like the staff, Coach Painter always is about surrounding himself with good people and good dudes and guys and things of that nature. And I think Purdue's staff and everyone associated with the program is what separates it, is because you just don't ever have any of those bad apples or those toxic individuals that drag everybody else down. And Coach Painter, of course, has done an amazing job with his recruiting. I'm able to be around all the the players on these road trips, and I can honestly say, like, there's not any guy or two that I'm always like feeling like he's a bad apple or feeling like he's not a good guy. Like, they all will, the way they interact with each other and interact with the staff, it's pretty remarkable, because it's a testament to Coach Painter and what he's done with the program and how he's built it up.
Yeah, it feels like this is the cheesiest way of saying it. There are a lot of programs, like with Purdue, now obviously guys, it used to be high five or handshakes. Now everybody fist bumps, right? So you walk up to somebody, you put your knuckles out to fist bump them, right?
Right.
Purdue is a fist out, not a handout program. Like, you just don't. It doesn't feel like there's anybody on that team that's got their hand out. Like, what's good for me? Instead, it's I got my fist out because it's like, let's go. We're in this together. That to me, and I know I'm overstating it perhaps, or overselling it, or over romanticizing it, but that you can see it. Yeah, maybe it's because I've been able to go to a practice here and there, or John's conversations with Matt or Elliot Bloom on with us yesterday. But I just think, Bobby, that's different. I just don't know that you get that other places. You don't have to look very far in this city to look at college programs where you can tell it's a bunch of guys with their hand out. What's in it for me? And at Purdue, it's more what's in it for us. And that's what I love about it.
No question. I feel the exact same way, and that's why it's so special to be associated with the program.
By the way, tomorrow night, now, do you have to take a nap? Or are you going to go get some chai tea from Eddie at Starbucks here on the Circle? What are you going to do to stay up so that you're pumped up to go at 10:15 at night when the game actually tips off?
Yeah, no doubt. Definitely going to have to mix in an afternoon coffee of some sort, I would imagine. But I will say the adrenaline that's going to be pumping. I love the NCAA tournament so much. Such a fun event and time of year, and obviously you get to this point in the tournament, you're just a couple wins away from a Final Four, and so the adrenaline alone is going to be having me in a good spot, I would imagine. But I'll definitely probably be adding in a coffee or two in the afternoon to just bolster myself for the late tip.
Well, certainly hope that Matt Painter's group has the same level of energy. They're going to need it against Houston. Very good team, but we shall see what happens. Bobby, appreciate the time as always. Enjoy it, all right?
Awesome, Jake. Thanks for having me.
Appreciate it. Bobby Riddell from –
turnout.
Appreciate it, Bobby. Bobby Riddell from Purdue. Eddie, do you happen to have a favorite Cougar? Demi Moore, Julie Louis-Dreyfus, Selma Hayek, Penelope Cruz, Sharon Stone. You can stop me whenever here. I'm trying to think of others.
Oh, no, keep going, Jake. Come on now.
Who's your favorite Cougar? I want to know.
Why do you want to know?
Because it's a fun conversation.
Is it?
Yes.
For who? You or me?
Both. I'll tell you mine. Hell, Julie Louis-Dreyfus. Love it. She got hotter with every year of Seinfeld. The last years of Seinfeld, unbelievable. When the rabbi's trying to hit on her and she's like wearing the black leather jackets, unbelievable. Mark Dykton and I we're in a mutual Julia Louis-Dreyfus admiration society. Selma Hayek?
Probably.
I mean, come on. Demi Moore, though, man. The voice. When we come back, I'm going to give Eddie Garrison the opportunity to shed light on his area of expertise. He's going to have the floor for about 2 minutes to educate all of you on something that you've been looking for in education, I can promise you. And it has to do with what today should be a national holiday, and I guess in a couple hours will be. So opening day is upon us. Our buddy J-Law is down at opening day, it appears.
I'm jealous.
Wish you were there, huh?
You see, I thought about going, but I was like, yeah, ticket price is a little too steep for me. I don't have the Jake Query income.
Hardly that. I would like for you, Eddie, we'll begin with this.
Okay.
The Reds are hosting the San Francisco Giants at 4:10 p.m. today.
Correct.
I believe, by the way, not that anybody cares, but I'll tell you anyway, I think that was the matchup of the first ever Major League Baseball game I attended, a doubleheader between the Reds and Giants back with Jay Ferguson and Marshall Gephardt in 1982. But I want you, Eddie, to go ahead and give us the Eddie Garrison as a baseball fan Cincinnati Reds season preview in terms of the areas where Cincinnati you are optimistic, changes that may have been made from a year ago, or areas that, with Terry Francona taking over the managerial spot, that are still big question marks for them and you feel could be their shortcoming this year.
From a roster standpoint, not a lot of new faces. The only one that really to know, or I guess two to know, is Austin Hayes. He comes over from Baltimore. Dealt with a multitude of injuries last year. Appears to be healthy, and when he was healthy prior to the injuries last year, he was a 300 hitter. He's probably on pace for over 20 homers, so he's going to add some flexibility in the outfield for Terry Francona, and he's a defensive-minded first guy in terms of Austin Hayes. As for the Reds in general, underneath Terry Francona, I think they're going to be a lot more consistent on the base paths. With David Bell, they were really reckless and ran themselves into a ton of outs, and Terry Francona in his opening press conference mentioned that they will be aggressive, but they will also be smart when they're on the base pass and not run themselves into so many outs, whether that's at third or at home. They still have Ellie De La Cruz, who is going to be batting third all season long for the Cincinnati Reds, is what Terry said. And he's the one who initiated that conversation of having some stability there as the third batter in the lineup. Of course, Terry has done that in his time with his best players, routinely, most notably with Jose Ramirez back when he was with the Cleveland Indians and now Guardians. The Reds' strength, I think, going into the season right now is their bullpen. They had a lot of competition for the final couple spots in the bullpen. Their closer, Alexis Diaz, currently, quote-unquote, injured. He is on the injured list for Cincinnati, so he will not be out there. The starting rotation should be another strong part of the Reds' roster right now, which is odd to say because usually the starting rotation and the bullpen have been 2 weak spots, and that
Hunter
is
Green starting today, right?
That is correct, yes.
And they go how deep in terms of their rotation that you trust?
Probably the first. I would say I trust 4 of the 5 starters right now.
Okay. Not bad, right?
Correct.
Same question, Chicago Cubs.
See, with Chicago, I can't really get a good read. They did some additions in the offseason. They are expected, at least if you look at it from a wins-loss standpoint, at Vegas, they are projected to finish second in the NL Central. First in the NL Central, Milwaukee second, Cincinnati third, and then rounding out would be St. Louis and Pittsburgh. I think the NL Central will be very competitive, but as for the Cubs, their strength is definitely their starting rotation with Shota Imanaga, Justin Steele, Jameson Taillon, and Matthew Boyd. I think Boyd's a sneaky signing for them. He was really good when he was with the Detroit Tigers, but he was coming off, I think, Tommy John surgery, so did not pitch much last year for them.
By the way, have you ever thought about the coincidence that Tommy John had Tommy John surgery?
He's
incredible, isn't it?
Yeah, he's the. Okay. No, I'm just not going to acknowledge that at all.
What are the odds of that? What are the odds Tommy John had Tommy John surgery? That's incredible.
Okay. Pico Armstrong should be a solid addition for them defensively in the outfield. It'll be a matter of if he can improve offensively. Kyle Tucker, huge addition for the Chicago Cubs, arguably a top 10 player in Major League Baseball, and he's one of those guys that's just as good as he is on defense as he is offensively. He'll hit over 30 homers. He should be in conversation probably for National League MVP. What else would you like to know?
Honestly, it is incredible, isn't it? Now, he's from Terre Haute, I think, Tommy John, right? But he had a surgery, and he had Tommy John surgery. Like, he needed something, and they're like, well, you know what? We have just the thing for you. Is that what they said to him when he went in there? And they're like, you've been throwing your arm in an unorthodox way, and so it's caused some tendon damage. But we have the answer for you.
I still think there's some questions with the
this
Chicago
surgery
Cubs
is just
bullpen.
for you.
They added Ryan Presley, and they have Porter Hodge. Those are 2 of their bigger names, and Eli Morgan, but It'll be some of those other guys that they'll need to get some
We
consistency
could give you the
out
Sandy
of. And
Koufax surgery, but no, this is custom tailor-made just for you. Tom.
outside of Kyle Tucker and Seiya Suzuki, I think that offense for Chicago is going to need some help.
We don't even know if we need to necessarily give you knock you out, because you're going to be so comfortable with this because it's custom made for you. What are the odds of that? That guy had to have felt like he won the lottery, right? Oh, well, what do you know? They got a surgery named for me.
Chicago White Sox, 54.5 is the win total.
Let's go, baby. I'm all in on the White Sox. You know, part of the reason I like the White Sox is because we went to a game, Shannon bought a White Sox hat, and God love her, she wears it every once in a while when we go out. She you know, if it's raining out or whatever, she's like, oh, I'm going to grab a hat, and she wears a White Sox hat. And I don't think she realizes that she's literally wearing a hat of the worst team in the history of baseball.
I want to revisit our baseball bet with
here's what we
listener
have.
Chad.
So this with listener Chad, we each took. I came up with a list based on one of the apps,
and you categorize teams into two different sections.
Correct. So I took the team. These were teams that had their over under wins of like 80, between like 75 and 85. You got to pick one from that category. I think there were 10, and then there were 3 teams that were projected to win. Their maximum win-loss was like 62 games. So you had to pair one from Group A with one from Group B. Listener Chad, and tell me if I wrote these down correctly, Eddie, because you have also in front of you.
Yep.
He has the combination, and the way this works, whoever between the two teams that you have has the higher win total of the two combined wins our bet for the 6-pack of beer. Diet Coke's perfectly sufficient, right?
No, I thought we were going out and getting drinks
That's right.
or something.
We're actually, I think we're going to go out for lunch. Yeah. Well, it'd have to be dinner. We can't do lunch with this show. So we'll take Chad out to dinner. We got his phone number, so the 3 of us are going to go out. Okay. He has the Reds and the Colorado Rockies, correct?
That is accurate.
You, Eddie, went with the Blue Jays and the Miami, Florida Marlins.
I did.
And I went with, I have zero chance of winning this. I totally understand. I have zero chance of winning. If I win this, it will be, do you know where the term upset comes from?
No, I don't, actually.
Man of War, one of the most dominant racehorses of all time, lost one horse race and lost to a horse named Upset. And that apparently or allegedly is the origin of the term upset in sports. It would be a bigger upset than that. It would be a bigger. Now, what are the odds that a horse named Upset, would actually win a race and pull off the upset? What are the odds of that? Incredible. It would be such a big upset that it would be even bigger than Upset pulling the original upset and becoming the namesake of the actual procedure. If the A's and the White Sox are able to get me the victory. If that happens, we're not even eating dinner here in town. We're going somewhere. We're going to go to like New York City and go to the finest restaurant in New York, and you guys are going to pick up the tab for me. Because there's zero chance the combination of the Sacramento Athletics and the Chicago White Sox, soon to be the Nashville White Sox probably, are going to get this done, right?
Well, you had the chance of the Athletics, the Angels, the Nationals, and the Cardinals. And you ruled out the Cardinals because you used to cover them.
Correct. I can't do St. Louis. I enjoyed covering St. Louis, and I had some great stories that happened when I was in St. Louis. You know my favorite story that happened when I covered the Cardinals that I've told on the air, and I'm always surprised that that it didn't become like a bigger thing?
I'm taking the Reds over 79.5 total regular season wins, by the way.
I covered the Cardinals in the McGuire era, and I liked Mark McGuire, don't get me wrong. But the Cardinals traded Fernando Tatis to the Montreal Expos for Dustin Hermanson and Steve Klein, 2 pitchers. And this story I have repeated many times, but I find it to be one of the most fascinating of things that I've covered in sports. So I'm in Cardinals spring training. Pujols was a rookie because he was taking over third for Tatis at that time. And we didn't know Dustin Hermanson and Steve Klein, both really good dudes. But they had come from Montreal. So I'm talking to Steve Klein, who was a super nice guy. He was from Pennsylvania. He coached high school wrestling in the offseason. I'm talking to Steve Klein, and I say, hey, what was it like playing for Felipe Alou? Steve Klein goes, it's fine. I've never talked to him. I go, didn't you play for him for a while? Because he was a pretty respected manager at that time. And what Steve Klein told me to this day is still, to me, the most unbelievable story of honesty and then verified that I have ever encountered in my time covering sports. And it blew me away. absolutely blew me away. I couldn't believe what he said, but it was unbelievable enough that I'll repeat it just to make myself believe it again next. That was the call as it sounded back in 1998 when Mark McGwire against the Montreal Expos hit his then record 70th home run. It was a magical time, no question. And as somebody who then covered the Cardinals, with McGwire there, and I liked Mark McGwire. He was a nice guy. All of the Andros stuff and look, I realize now we can look back and go, hey, the steroids were not considered illegal at that time, and there's no reason to go over the whole PED discussion because it's been done 10,000 times. But I will never forget, and maybe it was the first time, kind of the epiphany for me as a young reporter or media member, getting a glimpse behind the curtain with baseball. And a lot of the things of the summer of '98, now there are all kinds of discussions and topics and everything about the legitimacy of that home run chase between McGwire and Sosa, and then you had other guys in there that Luis Gonzalez that were hitting a ton of home runs, and Brett Boone, and whatever else. But when they made the trade, Dustin Klein and Steve Klein and Dustin Hermanson of Montreal for Fernando Tatis to the Cardinals starting the 2000-2001 season. And so I'm in Jupiter, Florida at Cardinal spring training and was there for the whole spring training, essentially. McGwire was dealing with patellar tendonitis. And I recall McGwire finally taking at-bats during batting practice in Jupiter, their baseball facility. You had all the diamonds kind of, just like any baseball facility where you've got one diamond and then it butts up against another diamond. And I had gone to the opposite diamond to film some stand-ups for television purposes with the Cardinals batting practice taking place behind me, unaware because none of us knew that McGwire was going to actually take BP. And he hit a home run that went over the fence into the diamond where I was standing. I mean, this was during spring training, so it wasn't like this was just a practice session. And I picked up the baseball. I still have it, by the way. I gave it to my mom. And the leather of the baseball had a burn mark on it. There was a black streak on the ball. And I found that interesting, and I've told the story before. In the year that Ted Williams came out during the All-Star game, he had all the players gathered around him, and Ted Williams pulls in Mark McGwire and asked him a question, and McGwire says yes, and Williams gets super excited. And in an interview I did with McGwire, I said, what was the question that Ted Williams asked you? And McGwire kind of lit up and said, he asked us if anybody ever smells the smoke from the bat when they hit the ball the right way where it burns the ball from the friction of the bat. And McGwire said, and I was the one person that knew what he was talking about. And I always thought that was such a neat anecdote because I had that baseball that he'd hit in the home run with the burn mark on it that verified, in fact, that does happen, which I thought was cool. But as I was talking to Steve Klein about playing for Felipe Alou in Montreal, I asked him about playing for Alou, and I said, was he a good guy? Because he was a very respected manager at the time. And Steve Klein said, I don't know, man, I never talked to him. And I said, what do you mean you never talked to him? You were a player on the team that he was the manager for. And then I'm thinking to myself as a young guy, well, I don't know, maybe bullpen guys don't ever talk to the manager. Maybe the manager doesn't work with pitchers. Maybe it's just a pitching coach. And he said, well, Felipe Alou only spoke Spanish, and I don't speak Spanish, and he only interacted with the Spanish-speaking players on our roster in Montreal. And I think they would have had Marquise Grissom maybe would have been there, and I don't know if he was a Spanish player or not, but Moises Alou, I think, would have been there at that time. Vladimir Guerrero may have been. I can't remember at that time. But at any rate, I said, really? And he said, well, yeah. And he said, man, that clubhouse was so divided. The Expos clubhouse was so divided among the Latino players and the non-Latino players. And he said, not necessarily in a rivalry way, but just in a communicative and interacting way. We just, because if you didn't speak the language, you didn't know what they were talking about. And he said, well, how do you think Mac won the home run derby? And I said, what do you mean? And he said, well, if you recall, Sosa was leading the home run derby going into the final 3-game stand of the season in St. Louis between the Expos and the Cardinals. And I said, yeah, I do remember that. I think McGwire was at 65 and Sosa was at 66 going into the last stretch of the season. And Klein said, well, we all sat around as a pitching staff and said, hey, you know what? We should let McGuire instead of a Latino player, like kind of as a fun jab at our teammates. We should let McGuire win the home run derby. And he said, so we went into the Cardinal clubhouse before the first game of the set and asked him and asked to talk to McGuire and said, where do you like it? He said, well, I like it belt high outside of the plate, mid-80s. And they said, okay, that's all you're going to get when you bat against us. And Klein said, we completely grooved him for every at-bat in that last 3-game set, and he hit 5 home runs against us to go to 70. I said, come on, you've got to be kidding me. And Klein said, no. He said, ask McGuire about it. He'll tell you. He's pretty cool about it. And Klein said, hell, for that matter, I still have the baseball bat that he signed for me, and I gave my nephew a baseball that he signed in thanking us. So I go into the locker room, and McGuire's sitting there, and McGuire was pretty cool. And I didn't know him well, but, I mean, I'd been around enough that he certainly knew who I was and knew that who I worked for and whatever. So I walk into McGuire, and I said, hey, I got a question for you. And spring training is very relaxed and laid back, and it's not as rigid as regular stuff. I said, I got a question for you. McGuire goes, all right. And he's like sitting there adjusting his, cleats or whatever. So he's kind of like half looking up at me. I said, I was just talking to Steve Klein, and there's no way what he told me. I couldn't believe what he told me. And McGuire looks up and kind of grins and goes, oh, man, he tell you about belt high? I go, yeah. Now, is that actually accurate? And McGuire goes, oh, dude, I'll tell you one step further. I said, okay. And he goes, Tony told me, meaning La Russa, that I was going to have my last day off the last game. I was going to sit the last game. And he said, I'd already was sitting on 68. I had passed Sosa, so it looked like it was over with. And he said, and I thought I wasn't playing in the finale. He said, I went out. I was out all night. He goes, I literally went out all night, partied, celebrated, had friends in. And he said, I come into the clubhouse fully expecting I'm going to take the day off. And he said, Tony calls me in and says, Mac, here's the deal. We got a sold-out crowd here. There's no way I can sit you. You got to play. McGuire says, I kid you not, I don't even know if I was sober when I went up for my first at bat. And he said, but I simply knew that I knew exactly where the ball was going to be, and so that's how I hit the last 2. And he goes, I honestly think I was seeing almost like double vision just based on my hangover in my first at bat. But I hit those last 2 because I knew absolutely 100% where the ball was. And he said, no question, Steve Klein is being completely honest with you. That is totally what happened. Like, holy cow, man. Now, I'm not saying that that's the norm in baseball, but I remember, and I think part of it was just that, I was a younger guy, so I was kind of their age, right? I mean, I have no idea why they felt the transparency to tell me that story, but I always found it unbelievable. And I've told it several times, and maybe I'm the only one that finds it amazing. But when I told it, and I think when I worked at IBC several years ago, I actually wrote a blog about it, and people were just like, yeah, okay. I think people were just jaded to the whole PED thing and everything else. But it was a different era as well, maybe, and maybe it hurts the sanctity of the game. I don't know. But it always kind of blew me away. But I will say all those guys were good guys, including I thought McGuire was he was a pretty good dude. He was kind of almost introverted, but not a bad guy. Jim Edmonds was a super cool dude. Super cool dude. And that team also, that Cardinals team, had some really good personalities on it. And the other story that I've told many times that I've always gotten a kick out of, and I think of it every year during opening day of baseball, because I do enjoy baseball. And I loved covering baseball. Covering a baseball team was fun because it was just every single night you're going to different games. And I went on the road. I covered them against the Braves. I was there for the Ankiel meltdown, all of that. But Edgar Renteria, the whole season, the first year that I got there, the whole year, we went to, Renteria was a really good player. And we'd go to him all the time and ask him for sound bites after a key hit or defensive play he had. And he didn't speak English. So he didn't do any interviews because he didn't speak English. And then they win the division. The Cardinals win the division in 2001. They won the Central despite McGuire being out for a vast majority of the year. They signed Eric Davis to kind of fill in, and Will Clark was a huge late signing for them. But Renteria afterwards, I'm in the clubhouse during the the celebration and everything else, and Renteria was on a cell phone talking to somebody and was like, yeah, can you believe we did it? Da, 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 da. And I'll never forget, I walked up to him and I said, I thought you didn't speak English. And Renteria looked right at me without hesitation and said, oh, to you guys, I don't. And that is probably my favorite quote from an athlete and one of the most eye-opening moments of honesty aside from the Klein McGuire thing ever. And I loved it. I've always loved Edgar Renteria ever since.
I noticed that with, I think Shohei does it. Like, you can tell Shohei understands English, and I think Shohei can speak it. But he still has the interpreter around.
Think about Ichiro. Ichiro was here for like 18 years, and you're telling me he never picked up English?
Yeah.
But when interviews would happen, he wouldn't do them because it was like, well, he doesn't speak English. I mean, come on. You know what I mean? Hey, Jake, I was a minor leaguer in St. Louis when the Andro controversy erupted. The minor leaguers and big leaguers would share the same weight room. McGuire is a good man. He was cordial to the minor leaguers. Plus, I've met him since. Nothing changed. Yeah, again, like I said, I liked him too. I always thought he was very nice. He was almost introverted, but was, I thought, a nice guy. Never had any problem with him whatsoever. Tony East, Pacers last night. We'll recap what happened with LeBron and the Pacers next. 2 o'clock hour underway. Last night, Fieldhouse, Pacers and Lakers. Let me go back to what I had mentioned earlier when we discussed this. There are certain players in sport that you don't know what it is, but for some reason, the moment magnetizes towards them. And yes, I understand that LeBron James, as a Laker, has had 18 attempts to put his team ahead in the final minute of the game and has yet to do so until last night. I get it. And I know that LeBron James, going into last night in the fourth quarter, had yet to hit a field goal. I think he attempted 6 of them. But it does not diminish from the fact or take away from the fact that he is still one of the, in my opinion, 10 best players in the league. Because, I mean, not only was he the Western Conference Player of the Month, but he is, I believe, in the top 20 in scoring, rebounds, and assists. But if you watched last night and you watched closely, Luka Doncic obviously is a great offensive player. But so much of what the Lakers do, everything the Lakers do, is centered around and predicated upon going through the presence of LeBron. His vision, just in terms of ball reversal and the quickness with which he can get the ball from one side of the floor to the next, to a guy really before a guy's even getting there, the touch that he can put on passes in transition after getting a rebound and seeing someone breaking that a lot of people might not even notice is streaking down the court. And then on that final play, Luka Doncic was, they went to LeBron first, and he saw and had the vision of the fact that Doncic at the top of the key he could get it to, and Siakam was slightly out of position for that. I get it, though, because you don't want to let Doncic pull up. And then when Doncic goes into the lane, probably the lone mistake last night for Jarris Walker was not immediately putting a body on LeBron and boxing him out. But if you were to look at that game, you would say to yourself, of course he's the guy that gets the tap in, right? In a game where he was otherwise, from a scoring perspective, lackluster. But there are a lot of questions to answer for the Pacers about the fact Tyrese Halliburton was not on the floor. Perhaps part of that is because they didn't want to take the timeout to get him in on the final Pacers offensive set, because that would have allowed J.J. Redick to get Doncic out, because Halliburton had been exploiting Doncic's turnstile defense for the better part of the fourth quarter. And Doncic is a great player, but he's also a petulant child that got too involved in barking at the two guys that were sitting on the floor and things like that. He was very easily distracted last night, but he's a very, very good player, but not defensively. And Halliburton was not on the floor. Walker is the one that got the final rebound that allowed the Pacers to then go in transition, but everything then unfolded as I explained it. Tony East was there last night. Talked to Rick Carlisle, Tyrese Halliburton, Miles Turner after the game. Joins us now on the program from, of course, Locked On Pacers and Forbes and WTHR. Tony, I'll begin with simply that. Your thoughts on the way that things kind of evolved in that final minute of the game and the 2020 vision of the hindsight of it.
Yeah, hindsight does make it really easy, as it always does, right? But after the Halliburton floater, to bring in a defensive group, I thought that made sense. And they'd been going away from these lineups with centers for a while. I mean, you were there, right? Like, they went to a Toppin-Neesmith 4-5 combo at one point, right? So they take off Turner and Halliburton for defense, and it works. They got to stop. And that was, funnily enough, because Jarris is going to be the center of a lot of attention for this last minute, the first play he does in the final minute defensively was like maybe the best one defensive possession he's ever had. He cut off a drive. He rotated out to Finney-Smith. He stopped him at the basket. He got the rebound. And right there's where everybody's like, okay, take that timeout. I understand getting across the timeline first, right, see what's going on, see if you can get the transition chance. It's very easy now for us to say, yeah, take it. The reason I would the rosy interpretation to me is that they thought, okay, let's try to score, like you said, with Luka on the floor, and then if we don't, we have a foul to give. We can sub then if we need to, but our defensive group's already on the floor. You're letting the Lakers sub in whatever group they want if you use your foul to sub and if you have to do certain things. So what they could have done is taken the timeout, put Ty Miles in, run a play, then use their foul to give the sub back to the defensive group. And again, it's easy to say all this with hindsight, and they didn't get anything going on that possession. Mathurin has to shoot late in the clock, and they actually defended the last possession okay until Jarris Walker, lost LeBron, the guy, at the buzzer. And I thought Miles Turner explained it pretty well. You're a young player. You see a shot go up with 2 seconds left. You think it's the last shot. You stand and watch. it wasn't, and that can't happen, right? That's a bummer for Jarris after he had a pretty good fourth quarter to that point. But, yeah, I think I would have called a timeout. It's easy to say that with hindsight, but I think I would have in the moment too, because what else are you going to use it for, right? The foul to give is there for you to sub if you need it, and they didn't call it, and they have to live with that now. And I think Rick knows because he said it, that he should have done it.
I want to talk about Jarris Walker, Tony. We've talked a lot about Jarris Walker, right?
Yeah.
I think when they were both rookies together, I don't know this, but I think it was tough for Jarris Walker a little bit because Ben Shepherd kind of came out of the womb playing. Now, he's a more mature player that played longer in college, but Ben Shepherd in his NBA infancy got into rotation earlier than did Jarris Walker. And I think that's difficult for any player because you're drafted higher. There's more expectation on you. You've been a marquee player at a marquee college program, and then now you are out of rotation.
Yeah.
Ben Shepherd now, it seems like Jarris Walker has kind of caught up to him in terms of the game slowing down and being able to give them quality minutes. And it seems like Shepherd, I'm not going to say has regressed, but has slumped a little bit here. Am I being too critical of the situation?
Well, no. So I've been on the side of they're playing the right person by playing Ben Shepherd right now. Like Walker's too up and down. He has games where he's not like I forget which game it was last week where he played and he didn't get back in transition twice, then he got yanked and barely played again. Right? Like last night was until the very final play what they hoped he'd show. Like he was psyched about hitting that three. He played physical and quick on defense and was locked in everywhere until that final one play. Like that's what they hope he can be. What's happening now that's making me think about the whole Shepherd Walker thing, because again, I've been saying that I think they're making the right call there. Like Shepherd's defense is what gets him on the floor, but it was fine for a while when he was making 33 to 35% of his threes. He made 40% the first month plus of the season. In March, he's like 25%. I think it might be even below that now. I think he's 1 for his last 19 from three. And so I talk about Ben Shepherd a lot, and I call him a player who doesn't make many mistakes. And, I don't consider a missed shot a mistake in basketball, like one missed shot. But 1 for 19, that's when you start to think about, okay, like what actually value is this providing? And he had a turnover with McConnell last night in the corner. That was a really head-scratching play where they both were kind of just desynced. So I think they play Shepherd over Walker because right now Ben Shepherd's the better defender. But he's at a point of slumping on offense that I agree with you. They can consider, okay, is this worth making this switch in the name of even right now, but also the long term. And they went to Jarris in the fourth quarter last night, and he was pretty good, right? And so I wonder if that will be a catalyst for more change in the future, or if they try to play small more often to play both of them, right? Thomas Bryant didn't even play 2 minutes last night. He's been really struggling since the All-Star break, maybe even a little before that, and they turned away from him yesterday and had good success with different smaller bench groups. Last year in the playoffs, they did that to some success. They're going to need size at some point this season. I don't think Thomas Bryant's done playing or anything, but as they try to figure out their rotation, guys 9 and 10 have not been given him much, and so they tried something else last night. And I agree, it's got to be tough for Jarris, and in some ways you hope it's motivating if you're the Pacers, and sometimes it feels like it has been, and sometimes it hasn't felt that way. And I think last night it aired on the good side, and hopefully for him could be a chance for him to launch into something more. They play again tonight. It'll be a back-to-back. I bet they are conscious of minutes, right? Maybe he'll play again. If he can follow it up with another good outing, people might forget about that one play, but he's got to do it. And Ben Shepherd's got to make some shots because those two, they could use one of them to be much better than this.
Tony, I want to ask you if I noticed something that I've just been asleep at the wheel or if I noticed something, okay?
Yeah.
Last night during the game, in particular in the first half, but it seemed like the Pacers offensively, at times their offensive flow was irritated by, it seemed to me that the Lakers, and I don't know how to word this, but when the basketball would get within a 10-foot cylinder of the basket, so the low post and the lane in particular, Los Angeles' ability to collapse defensively, literally 3 guys at all times, you couldn't drive without the ball getting knocked out. You couldn't dump it in low without a double team immediately coming. I thought that they were as swarming a defense in the interior as any that I've seen in the NBA, and that's what made them unique because it facilitated for them to then go pace the other way. But then I thought to myself, maybe I'm just not paying attention to that for other teams, and I'm more so this one because it's the Lakers and it's LeBron and whatever else. Did I notice something, or have I not noticed it elsewhere?
No, I think you did. I think you're right. And, a lot of times the Pacers will have, to specifically focus on the second quarter, they'll have a quarter like that where they get smoked, and they are right, and they'll go to the podium and say, we had good looks, we just didn't make them. That was not the case last night. They did not even get good shots, right? They could get in the lane and get nothing. And, you were there, right? They were at the shot clock buzzer 2 out of every 4 possessions, it felt like, right? It took them forever to get anything up, and a lot of times when that's the case, it's like a bench group or a mixed group on the floor that's struggling, and then the other team's in a zone, and they switch to the starters, and it ends. That didn't happen either, right? That when they would pivot off of, back to starters, they still couldn't get it going. And, sometimes these just continuous cycles happen where a team is really locked in defensively, as the Lakers were that quarter. They get stops. Then because they got to stop, they hit the open floor, and then they score, and then they can set their defense, and their defense has been playing really well. And in that quarter, with Reeves going crazy, he had injured Emhart with the too small, and Luke, I think, had 11 points in that second quarter. Like, that snowball just never stopped. And the Pacers sometimes can get out of it with decent shooting, but I think they were 4 for 15 on twos that quarter. Like, they could not get anything going. I totally agree with you. And the Lakers' size, even without Anthony Davis, is still a problem for them, and it really loomed large that quarter because they were better than the Lakers for the rest of the game.
I think last night you can kind of get away with, I hate to say get away with losing that game, every game you want, right? To me, we're walking out of there, and I said, all this does is makes tomorrow night, meaning tonight, a must-win. And by that I mean, I can't imagine if you beat L.A. and then you turn around and you sleepwalk through in Washington on a back-to-back and you lose to the lowly Wizards. I can't see that happening. But to me, you can quickly put this one behind you if you get it tonight. But Washington's kind of been tricky for them. They don't drop this one tonight, do they, Tony?
Yeah, they went to OT last time they were there. Fortunately for the Pacers, the Wizards are also traveling on a back-to-back. They were in Philly last night. That's like the shortest possible travel. But still, that is their reality as well. The inertia of these games is funny to me. What I mean by that is, like, this happened in Philly and in some cases with the Nets and Mavs games the Pacers played. There's a different – like, the Pacers totally have a problem with playing their level of competition a little bit. But it changes the calculus of that a little bit when your opponent is not wanting to win, right? Like, the way the game ends just flows differently. The other team is trying young guys instead or doing all sorts of goofy stuff. And so they smoked Philly in the second half. They smoked Brooklyn for 3 quarters. They came back against Dallas and Brooklyn. And, like, a lot of that was the way those games allowed the Pacers to play. They did a good job late, but also the other team not necessarily, putting their best group on the floor in a closing lineup or something like that. And so is it possible they trip all over themselves and lose? They struggled with the Wizards in February? Yeah, absolutely it is. I've seen the Pacers lose that kind of game 100 times, and it feels like in the last 2 seasons. But when it comes to late March and the Wizards are trying to get the worst record, which is a pathetic thing to say, but they're in a fight with the Jazz for it right now. Like, they won last night, which actually hurts their chances of having the worst record. I think the Wizards are very motivated to lose in a way that even the on a back-to-back, just played a bunch of minutes in a tight game, Pacers can escape Washington with a win.
Tony East is our guest. Tony, I'm going to do this to you with a trivia question. You ready?
Yes.
If you get this right, I'll be highly impressed. Now, you are a master of salary cap and, understanding player salaries and things like that, right?
Yes.
Okay. If you get this right, I will actually be very impressed. And I want you to make sure that you are not cheating. You're not like on a Google. You're not on a computer, right?
I am on my computer right now, but I will not Google it.
Okay. I want to make sure that you cannot Google this answer.
Okay.
Now, what sort of prize would you like to play for on this fabulous trivia question involving tonight's Pacers-Wizards game?
That's a great question. I have no idea.
I'll buy you a beer sometime, a Diet Coke perfectly sufficient. How's that?
Okay, deal.
Okay. Or what beer would you go with, by the way?
Basic as it comes, I'm taking Blue Moon.
Okay. Well, no orange wedge, I promise you. All right, here's the question. Eddie, do we happen to have the Jeopardy theme by chance to play? Okay, here we go. This member of the Washington Wizards, when he walks into the locker room, is able to say to all of his teammates, I'm the highest paid member of this fabulous organization that's won 16 games this year. Who is the highest paid Wizard?
It's either Jordan Poole or Chris Middleton.
In the form of a question, please.
Oh, sorry. I'm thinking out loud before I answer. I know their contract numbers. I think it's who is Chris Middleton?
Who is Chris Middleton? Correct.
Yes.
I'm impressed you know that. Would you like to know the figure for Chris Middleton?
Is it 35-ish, 34.5-ish?
$31.6 million for Chris Middleton. Up
Just
next,
above
Jordan
Jordan
Poole
Poole.
at $29 million. Now, if you
Just
can
above
tell
Jordan
me,
Poole.
can you tell me the third and fourth place? I mean, why stop now? You're on a roll here.
Third place, it would be Malcolm Brogdon, yeah?
$22.5 million well spent for Malcolm Brogdon.
Brogdon, yeah.
Fourth.
That signed with the Pacers. Malcolm Brogdon contract.
Okay, fourth.
Man, Marcus Smart's isn't that big, but that did jump to my head first. It's either Smart. Koulibaly's got a big rookie deal, so does Alex Sarr. I guess it's Marcus Smart. I'll say Marcus Smart. I don't think that's right, though.
Marcus Smart in a
right.
contract that's hardly that. $20.2 million per year. Very
I thought it
impressive.
was lower than that for some reason.
How in the world do you know that, by the way?
Is this where I reveal who Tony's favorite NBA team is?
I was going to say there's two reasons I know these answers, Jake.
Okay, go
One
ahead.
is that I have I have my own salary tools that I've made for myself to track all this stuff at my house. But I also
You get a lot of babes with that, by the way?
I love to hang out with my models at my house. It's my math model. And then, yes, I was, in fact, a Wizards fan as a kid, so I do keep up with them a little too often, unfortunately.
No, hold on. Where did you grow up?
Born like an hour out of Chicago and then moved here when I was like 7 or 8.
How did you become a Wizards fan?
Well, we came here right when the brawl happened, basically.
Okay.
And so, I mean, you remember that.
I get
like,
it,
nobody
of
was in
course.
Yeah. So my first basketball video game was NBA Live 2004,
Like
and I
Ike
loved
Diagu wasn't wetting your whistle necessarily is what you're getting at?
Yes. So my favorite player at the time was Anton Jameson, and I was like kind of NBA apathetic at the time, but then I loved John Wall, and lo and behold, the Wizards won the lottery that year. So it just stuck. I wore a John Wall jersey to college graduation.
Excuse me?
Yes.
John Wall was a heck of a player.
He was.
And he's still
Injuries
getting –
really I mean, man, nobody could block shots or run the floor like that guy. He was so fast.
John Wall might actually be the highest paid Wizard still, right? Is he still under contract?
I
Honestly.
think they regret that contract quite a bit, yes.
No, he ended up in, where was it, Houston?
Yeah, he got traded straight up for Russ because they were the only two contracts that could be traded for each
What
other.
was the injury that John Wall had?
He got hurt twice. He tore his ACL, and then he slipped in the shower and hurt his knee again.
Okay.
Sorry, he slipped at his house. I think it's well assumed it was the shower.
Okay. It was well assumed it was the shower. Okay, so Pacers and Wizards tonight. Miles Turner said something interesting, Eddie, last night. Do we happen to have what Miles Turner said about losing? Tony, I want your reaction to this. I think it might have been to you that he said it. Here's Miles Turner on losing last night.
I think it needed to happen, personally. You know, you get on these Cinderella historic type runs for a couple weeks, and, you know, at times you need to be humbled. You know, you got to do all the little things right to win a game in this league, and a couple things we didn't get right there. So, you know, I'm glad it kind of brought us back down to earth a little bit. You know, we have a tough road ahead just to, you know, try to get home court advantage in the playoffs. So, you know, you obviously want to win games. Don't misquote me there. But at the same time, I mean, this is also a humbling, you know, thing that happened.
Tony, does this kind of allow them to reset the table a little bit after playing with fire for several games?
Yes, that's why I asked the question, right? Like I asked Ty the same thing because, you know, don't get me wrong, it's like they'll take it that they won all those close games this month, but at some point that can't just happen forever and ever and ever. Their odds of winning was insanely low 4 or 5 times, and they won every single one. Like, in a way, you almost need to be reminded, like, oh yeah, we can't just like coast to the end and then pull it out. You know, you gotta have a better second quarter, not put yourself in that situation. You can't start the fourth quarter off with a group that, you know, can't score for a minute and a half and you give up 6 points. Like, you gotta be playing right for 48 minutes to win, especially when you're not playing the Mavs or Nets of the world to get these wins out. And, you know, I don't know how humbling it truly is to lose at the buzzer to LeBron James, but given, I think, that they had so many of those tight wins, I think that, yes, that does matter in terms of their mentality late in those games and the way that they, can approach even any game, like for a full 48 minutes like tonight.
Tony, I know Tyrese gets all the attention because obviously he's the highest paid player on the team, but Obi Toppin has been really good as of late for the Pacers as well. Pascal Siakam has been Mr. Consistent. But the guy who's been really consistent, who's been really good the last 2-3 weeks for the Pacers has been Aaron Nesmith, and I don't think we've spent enough time talking about him. What has changed the last 2 to 3 weeks for him that's led to all of this offensive success?
Well, besides making threes, which is like what happens when he is playing moderately well in offense, it's the way he gets off the line that's been really impressive recently, right? He is getting into the lane and hitting twos at maybe the best rate he ever has, or at least it feels that way to me. I mean, in the first quarter last night, he had 2 or 3 floaters. One of them he got past his defender and then stopped at the right block and shot it. It wasn't like a running floater or a layup or anything. I was like, whoa, he's got that really going for him in a way that is where I've seen the most improvement of late and since the break. And some of it's health. That's what Rick Carlisle said. But the fact that he's basically making the most actually I can just check per 36. Yeah, he's making the most 2-point shots per 36 of his career right now and shooting a career high percentage from 3 this season. Yeah, that's going to lead to good scoring numbers. But to me, it's the fact that he can even get up as many twos as he can, because that was a big point of his growth last year. I mean, everybody's going to remember that Game 7 in the Garden where he hit mid-ranger after mid-ranger when they ran him off the line. But, I mean, he's been doing it this season at an even better level, and that's been a big part of his growth is using his 3-point shot to be able to get into the lane and score and make plays. And he keeps becoming more and more efficient. Since the break, it feels like he can't miss. And eventually I have a feeling the 3 will settle a little. I mean, he's been really hot since then, but I mean, he's been a 40% shooter 2 straight years. He can guard, and when he gets the 2-pointers cooking like this, he looks like an awesome piece to have, and that's why Rick Carlisle called it a 1-2 punch with him and Mathurin at the 3. They get both of those guys really rolling.
All right, now let's talk about Tyrese. Are they managing his minutes?
Yeah, they did. Rick talked about that last night, and I think on Brooklyn was his first game back. They'd mentioned that they were trying to keep him around 30, which doesn't sound like managing. That's a lot of minutes, but that's when you've had a groin and a back and a hip and everything, of late. And he had missed 2 different stretches of games with injuries. You got to be careful with that. So he played just over 30 against the Nets, and then less than 30, I think, when they beat Minnesota. Because they blew him out, they could keep him out late. So I think they were trying to some extent yesterday. I also think the reason his minutes were lower yesterday is he was just stuck at the scorers table for little over 2 minutes in the fourth quarter. He was trying to come in for Jarris, and there was just no stoppages in the game. So I think they would have been okay with him landing at about 33 or 34 yesterday. Yeah, the back-to-back certainly a factor there. But, yes, given the number of injuries he's had and the playoffs being 10 games away now, which is wild to say, I think they're going to be cognizant with everybody. They have to be, and they've kind of settled that they're going to be somewhere 3 through 6, likely 4 or 5.
So, Tony, if you were a childhood Washington Wizards fan, today's opening day in Major League Baseball, what are you, a White Sox fan, Marlins? What's your glutton for punishment?
My fandoms are all over the place, yes. I am a Phillies fan for baseball because I caught a Jimmy Rollins foul ball at a Rockies game in Denver when I was 6.
You were just visiting Denver, or you lived in Denver?
Yes.
Okay.
We went on a family trip. And so we went to Coors Field, and we got really great seats. And I caught a Jimmy Rollins foul ball early in the game. And then there was a foul ball down the sideline or the line later, and the ball boy gave it to me. So I got 2 that game.
Come on.
And I know. It was unbelievable.
Do you have either?
I gave the other one to someone else because my dad was like, you can't probably get 2. You'll have to ask my dad that story someday. Because
do you have the Jimmy Rollins one?
I do have the Jimmy Rollins one, yes.
I've been to this makes me so angry. Not at you per se. My goal in life, 2 things that I've always wanted to do in my life: get a foul ball and get selected on jury duty. I've been to, I don't even know how many, 1,000 games. I don't know. I mean, a ton, not 1,000, but I'll bet I've been to multiple hundreds of baseball games. I've never been within sniffing distance of a foul ball, and now I'm obviously at the age where if I get one, it's going to go to the closest kid, right? I mean, I'm not that big a jackass, but still, I'm insanely jealous of you is what I'm getting at. But, that's cool.
Little lucky, yes. I caught in an Indians game before, too, so maybe I shouldn't rub it in, but AAA baseball fields. a little different. I've also seen a no-hitter and a grand slam in person. I've been extremely lucky with baseball attendance, like shockingly lucky.
I've seen a grand slam. I saw Kurt Stillwell hit a grand slam, and I think it was his first ever career home run. I mean, I've covered enough baseball that I've seen some grand slams, but a no-hitter, I've never even been close. And last year I went to a White Sox game, and the guy for Minnesota had a no-hitter through 5, and I told Shannon, I'm like, well, we can't leave early unless they break up the no-hitter. They did. So we left in the 8th inning, and the White Sox closed out the game in the 9th inning on an immaculate inning, which is 9 pitches, 9 strikes.
Wow.
It's rarer than a no-hitter. It's rarer than a perfect game. And we left. I heard it on the radio as we're in the parking lot, and then they lost 22 straight. What the hell, right?
I saw the Cole Hamels no-hitter at Wrigley, and it was a 1-0 game, like terrible. I think the Phillies had 4 hits in the whole game. And it was funny, like in the 7th inning when all the Cubs fans were, I was like, oh, he has a no-hitter. He had like 6 walks, right? So no one even realized it because there were a lot of guys on base all night. And it was funny to see the Cubs fans flip to all of a sudden being like, yeah, I'd rather see the no-hitter.
Well, okay, so that leads to my last question. I've asked this one a lot, but I'll ask you, Tony, and I'll ask you, Eddie. If you go to if you go to an innocuous July game, so I'm not talking about a pennant race, you go to just a game in July to see your team play, how far into the game does the opposing pitcher have to be with a no-hitter before you go ahead and root for the no-hitter to see it?
Never.
Wow. It was pretty sweet. 7th inning was about a good time, I think.
Okay, what about perfect game, Eddie?
Because that's like the 3rd time through the order, right? Or in this case, like almost 4th. So then like, oh, he's gotten all these guys out twice. Like I've gotten to see everybody a few times,
Eddie, is your answer, or Tony, we got Tony's answer, 7th inning or beyond. Is your answer, Eddie, dependent upon the scoring margin? If your team is down 7-0.
Nope.
Come on, man.
No.
A perfect game.
No. Still no. Not rooting for it.
That's ridiculous. You got a chance to see base. You have a chance to say that you saw something that's only happened like fewer than 100 times in the history of Major League Baseball. How many perfect games have been thrown?
I'll look it up.
Okay. We'll get that answer in a second. Tony, appreciate it. Pacers, Wizards tonight. We'll talk to you soon. We'll see what happens.
24.
Appreciate the info.
You got it.
All right, appreciate
Thanks
it.
for having me, guys.
24 times.
Mm-hmm.
24 times in the history of Major League Baseball. You would be literally in the 0.01 percentile of baseball fans in the history of the game to say that you saw a perfect game. And you would be more interested in seeing your team, the Cincinnati Reds, close it to a 9-game gap in the middle of July.
Yep.
Okay. Eventually, you're going to be an old man, and you're going to sit back and you're going to say, like I wish I'd seen something like that.
I went to a Rockies-Giants game. Was this last year? No, 2 years ago. It'll be 2 years ago now. This summer, and there was a no-hitter going into the 8th inning, but the Giants had scored a run.
Yeah, so what, got on a scoring error, a run?
So I had a walk, stolen base. This was with no outs, ground ball, advanced into 3rd, then like a sac fly, scored the runner.
I mean, that definitely takes it away from it a little bit, right?
And then I saw them hit a walk-off, the Rockies come back and win in the bottom of the 9th inning.
By the way, somebody asked me this today. Jake, can you give an update on the NCAA practices? Elliot Bloom informed us yesterday. The NCAA does public practices only for the opening rounds and the Final Four. There are no open to the public practices for the Sweet 16 in Indianapolis for Kentucky, Tennessee, Houston, or Purdue. So while I apologize to folks that were hoping to be able to go down and watch practice, I agree it's one of the great traditions of the NCAA tournament. It unfortunately is something that is not happening today. Assuming tonight, by the way, JMV out on remote. Where did you say he is today, Eddie?
Joe's Grill. I can hear him in the
which location?
In Q, and it sounds like it's a party going on already.
Which location for Joe's Grill? Plenty of time to get up there. I saw Good Jimmy last night at the game. Always good to see him. He mentioned that I think he's going to be up there. Which location for Joe's Grill?
Sorry, I was looking at your text that wasn't coming through. Joe's Grill in Castleton.
Joe's Grill in Castleton. Plenty of time to get up. Enjoy a cold beverage, Diet Coke, perfectly sufficient with JMV.
82nd Street.
By the way, 82nd and 86th, if in case you're wondering, 86th Street changes to 82nd Street as it heads east and westbound at the David Wolf Bridge, which goes over White River, in case you've ever been wondering that fun fact.
By the way, I just opened this text that you sent me, and are we sure I won't get caught?
That's a great question. Would you like to share with the audience what I sent you?
No, it's just watermelon gummies. This is all we can reference there.
Okay. Here's the schedule tonight for the NC. You ever hear it called the NC2A?
Okay. I've heard NCAA.
I've always said NCAA is what I've always said.
Really?
NCAA tournament, yes.
I've not heard 2A.
That was big in the mid-'80s. People would say the NC2As, but the NCAA tournament. BYU and Alabama. Which of these would be best if this was a football matchup? Okay, you tell me which of these four is the best football game. You ready?
Okay.
BYU, Alabama. 1 to 10, if it was a football game, what would you rank it if it's BYU and Alabama?
I would probably, is it still on like the neutral location, neutral field, or was it?
Yeah.
Okay. Probably like a 6 or a 7.
I was going to say 6.5 is exactly what I was going to say. Maryland and Florida. That's a 6, probably,
That's a
right?
4, 3 or 4. Maryland's not usually good in football.
We'll give it a 5. Arizona, Duke. Yeah.
That's probably a 4 as well.
4, yeah. Arkansas, Texas Tech.
That could get
it's
interesting.
A 6, right?
Yeah,
6
5.5, 6.
Yeah. I'm telling you, each of the games remain. It is fascinating. If you look at the tournament, it's fascinating the number of matchups that how many schools now are powers in both. I'll give you a couple of others.
Are we looking at tomorrow's games?
Yes.
Okay.
So you've got what? Auburn, Michigan State. Is that who they play?
Michigan State, Ole Miss.
I'm sorry. Auburn is playing. Who's
Michigan.
Auburn got?
Michigan.
Yeah. Ooh.
That'd be an 8 or a 9.
Football wise, that's pretty solid, right?
Mm-hmm.
Okay. Then you got who's Ole Miss playing? Michigan State.
That's probably a 5 or a 6.
6, right?
Just because Michigan State was weighing that one down.
I mentioned Maryland. Okay. Then the other ones. Let's see here.
Kentucky, Tennessee.
5.5.
Yeah,
Last year, not bad, right?
And then Purdue and Houston.
3, 2,
1.
That actually also lists total number of wins between the two schools, right? Okay, tonight in the games, BYU, Alabama's at 7, and Maryland, Florida at 7:30. The Maryland story, so here's the deal. I mentioned this earlier. Kevin Willard's the head basketball coach at Maryland.
Yes.
Villanova had reportedly had an agreement for their head coaching position, and there was some report that it was a done deal that Richard Pitino was taking that job, right?
That's what I read. I don't know if it was credible.
Right, and then Pitino ends up at Xavier.
I see. That's what doesn't make sense to me. Like, if you're backing out of a deal at Villanova, why are you going to a lesser school in the same conference? To me, if you're backing out of a deal, it's to return to the school you're at because they're giving you, know, boatloads of cash.
Well, it means that somebody errantly reported something, right?
That's also a fair point.
But then Willard, so then the story became, no, they're waiting on Willard at Maryland. Now the latest report, and I do have a hard time believing. I have a hard time believing this. But the report, and I don't know how, sometimes these quote-unquote reports get tricky because you see something and you're like, oh, wow. Then you look at it and it's from onroundball.com.
Really?
And, and you look at it and it's like, okay, I've never heard of this site. I mean, then let me read you. I'm going to sound like a 7th grader here in trying to go with the legitimacy of something based on how many followers they have, okay?
Okay.
Maybe that's very mature. Are you familiar with Number 3 Sports? That's NO3, the number 3 Sports. Are you familiar with that site?
Not fully.
Okay. Number 3 Sports, and maybe this is like it could be like the Peegs of the University of Maryland.
I've heard of On 3 Sports. That's why I was thinking if it's the same thing or not.
Number 3 Sports, leading the country in the spreadage of college sports. CEO and founder of Number 3. Here we go. Might be a parody. Might be a parody, it says. They sent a report saying Maryland men's basketball coach has reportedly informed his players that he does intend on accepting the head coaching position at Villanova after the season is finished. We intend on finishing the season strong and winning a championship. Now, they are crediting Terp Recruiting, at Terp Recruiting. Now, let's check Terp Recruiting. See, this is how you chase these things down, right? That feels hard to believe. Terp Recruiting has 14,000 followers. Okay? They offer $20 off your first order at SeatGeek using the promo code Terp Recruiting out of College Park, Maryland. And they also are saying that this is a possibility. I have a hard time believing it. I have a very hard time believing that he has already told his team he's leaving. There's no way on the precipice of an NCAA Sweet 16 that you'd say, oh, and by the way, I'm out of here. Right?
To keep things live, local, and late breaking, Jake. Yesterday, Tom Brew of Sports Illustrated Indiana.
Yep, good
Did
guy.
you see this?
No.
He reported as breaking news that Mackenzie Mbako announced that we already knew this, that he was going to the transfer portal and testing NBA waters.
Right.
But on Wednesday, he closed the door on returning to Indiana and said there was no chance he comes back.
Mackenzie Mbako said that.
Mm-hmm.
I thought Mackenzie Mbako actually was somebody that I kind of liked the way that his game would fit with apparently what we hear on how DeVries likes to run things.
And Cannon Carlisle went in the transfer portal yesterday, thus leaving Bryson Tucker as the only player that is currently on the IU roster that played minutes from a season ago. That's if Luke Goody gets that 5th year of eligibility.
Did you see, by the way, the rumors that Gabe Cup,
$1 million?
Gabe Cups, now they're saying 600,000. But either way, I'm like, really? If Gabe Cups is getting $600,000, then if I'm Braden Smith, I'm like, let's go. $6 million, baby. But he ain't leaving Purdue. At least I hope not. We'll come back, put a tie on all of it, and hand it off to John. Man, this song was awesome. This came out right around this time, probably peaked right around this week in 1987. Great tune. I'm curious, Eddie, if you could go to any of these schools that are remaining here in tonight's tournament.
Okay. Specifically, the schools playing tonight, as in Thursday.
Yes.
Okay.
I'd like for you to rank for me, of these schools, which one you think would be the most. Now, I'm not talking the academics of it. That goes without saying.
Oh, I figured.
Which one do you think would be the coolest to attend? BYU, Alabama, Maryland, Florida, Arizona, Duke, Arkansas, Texas Tech.
I think it's a pretty clear runaway favorite here, Jake, and I am going to go with the Gators.
Okay.
Close second would be Alabama.
Yeah, Alabama's cool. I almost went to the University of Alabama. It's a great campus.
And there's something about Brigham Young that would be very last on my ranking there.
Well, you drink your chai tea and they find out you had caffeine, and then it's expulsion. Arkansas.
Woo, pig suey.
Woo, pig suey. When I was a freshman in college, I went to the University of Kansas. The fraternity with which I pledged, which in hindsight now I look at that and it's the biggest eye roll ever, but we had a thing called walkout. I think most fraternities do this, where as a pledge class, you organize to all get together and you're like, we're walking out for the weekend, and you go away to your fraternity at a different university. And you, of course, think that like none of the actives in the house are aware of what you're doing. That's totally false. They're totally aware. But anyway, so we went to the University of Arkansas, to the fraternity that I was a member of at the University of Arkansas, and we stayed there. It's just like the movie Road Trip. You like stay at the other fraternity house and whatever else. Like, oh man, your brother. We went to the Arkansas-Baylor football game. I've always kind of liked Arkansas. The University of Arkansas was a very cool campus. I enjoyed everything about being down there, but the one thing that I noticed is that every guy from Arkansas that was there was 5'8", 230 pounds and drunk. Every one of them.
Wow.
It was like short, stout, drunk guys everywhere. With little hands, like Kenny Pickett's walking around.
Hands.
Yes, they were all drinking Little Kings just so that they could put their hands around them. It was weird. Literally, every single guy, and they all talk like, "How you doing?" But it's a beautiful part of the country. And the school is kind of cool, and the people were nice. Don't get me wrong. Two of the guys in my pledge class got into a wrestling match and crashed through one of their crystal glass tables, and they didn't get mad at us for it. So I mean, that was cool.
Did you just describe Derek Schultz a little bit there, but a little more weight in alcoholics?
Yes. Well, Derek Schultz at his bachelor party, though. Now, Derek's not a big drinker, don't get me wrong. But at his bachelor party, I showed up late. And when I got to his bachelor party, I met up with him in Broderpool. He was in the alley between Old Pro's Table and the Alley Cat shadow boxing. So I don't know how well he does after a couple of shots, but he was boxing no one, just standing in the alleyway shadow boxing. So take that for what it's worth. I have a question, by the way, that has nothing to do with the world of sports for you, Eddie, and I'm hoping that you can help me out here.
Is this an attempt to make our audience understand me a little bit better?
Well, no, it's actually, you're a young guy, so maybe you know the answer to this.
Okay.
This goes in waves, don't get me wrong, and I just happen to be in the midst of one of these waves, and then kind of they go away for a while. Can anybody suggest for me an app or a program on my phone to block spam calls?
Ooh.
I'm now getting, here's my today alone. In the last hour, I've gotten 6 of them. The last 4 from unknown callers, and then, potential spam, like literally it's like every 20 minutes.
Here's the problem. Like right now it's tax season, so you're probably getting a bunch of those.
Right.
Not to mention the new one is the toll-free roads.
Yes, I get those texts every once in a while.
Yeah. I got 2 of them yesterday.
But I mean, it becomes difficult. I mean, it's like, I'm trying to do stuff. I use my phone obviously for computer type work, and it's difficult. It's constant, seemingly. It seems to be nonstop.
But I don't know of any apps out there. I'm sure, Jake, with your reach of your followers / fanboys / roadie / diehard fans,
that's right.
There's people out there that'll start blowing up your phone. 317-523-9288.
Yeah, well, I mean, I give my number out on the air, don't get me wrong, but here's what I think happened. I think somebody punked me.
Is it impressive I memorized your number by now?
That is impressive, because most people, you don't know anybody's number anymore, right?
Right.
Somebody gave my number to one of the car dealerships.
Was this a prank?
I don't know if it was that, but literally, I kept getting calls for Leah Or no, Mia. It was Mia. Hi, Mia. This is Cindy with, I'm not going to say the name of the dealership, but I'm really interested. And this Mia apparently was looking at a Kia and a Jeep. And I was getting calls constantly. And I was like, finally, I kind of snapped and was like, look, I have no, like, I called him back and I'm like, because I told them like 5 different times to please
Speaking of which,
out.
I just got an unknown call.
Did you really?
Spam. Yeah.
Did you really?
Yeah.
Maybe somebody's punking both of us. JMV is going to be at Joe's up on 82nd in the Castleton area, previewing, I'm sure, these games tonight and talking about what happened last night at Gainbridge Fieldhouse with LeBron James hitting the game winner over, really not really over anybody. I guess Jarris Walker, but on the tip from the Luka Doncic miss. Question now is, what do the Pacers do to respond and reply to that? Because they have the Washington Wizards. We will be talking about that tomorrow, also getting you set for Purdue and Houston tomorrow. It's going to be an awesome night. Between the games downtown tomorrow, the weather doesn't look great. I think it's going to be rainy, but it's going to be warm. I would encourage everybody to come down, soak in the atmosphere, have at, but you can start all of it and get the weekend started early by hanging out with John. He's going to be there until 6 at Joe's. We'll hand it off to him, and we will be back with you at noon tomorrow. Thank you to Tony East, Bobby Riddell for joining us earlier today, and we will talk to you at noon tomorrow. Thank you for listening to Query and Company.